The mid-battle armor shedding had forced Loki and Ronan back, and by the time they recovered their stances, Gao Li had already finished transforming into Kamen Rider Kabuto Hyperform. Grandma once said, Gao Li raised a single finger to the sky. To deal with trash like you, I only need 1 second. What are you talking about? Ronan lunged in rage, and Loki, regaining his composure, began to weave a spell. Dozens upon dozens of figures suddenly filled the battlefield, the full force of Loki's magic, replicating both Ronan and himself. The illusion was terrifyingly effective. Thor, Steve, and Bucky had all been fooled. It didn't matter. It wasn't going to work on Gao Li. Hyperclock up. Gao Li activated it instantly. Hyper Kabuto's Hyperclock up was orders of magnitude faster than the standard clock up. If normal clock up accelerated you to the rough equivalent of 50 times the speed of sound, Hyperclock up pushed you into the hundreds. Time itself fell away into near stillness. Everything frozen, everything except Gao Li. He hadn't been boasting. In that arrested second, he could do countless things. Kabuto power, the bee power, Drake power, Sassword power. Gao Li summoned the 100-insect sword and pressed its buttons in sequence. Lightning danced along the blade. He didn't need to pick out real bodies from Loki's illusions. He only needed to cut every presence on the field at once, including the originals. All Zector combine! Maximum Hyper Typhoon! The 100-insect sword bloomed into a colossal light blade aimed through the cluster of Ronins and Lokis. This was a technique on par with Maximum Hyper Cyclone, a concentrated destructive force capable of penetrating everything within 100 kilometers. Not even Ronin's hulking frame could withstand it. Boom, lightning, thunder, and fire erupted the moment Gao Li stepped out of Hyperclock up. The illusions and clones were consumed, leaving only 2 actual bodies, severed in half, falling to the ground. What? Ronan and Loki stared in disbelief. Before they could cry out properly, blood gushed from their mouths like fountains. Even with their unnatural vitality, such injuries could not be survived. In their final moments, they could not comprehend what had happened. They had been cut cleanly in 1 second, just as Gao Li had promised. So, this Guardian really is as terrifying as they say. That thought flickered through Ronan's eyes before life left him. Loki's skin went blue, his form shifting into a strange hybrid of frost giant and Asgardian god as he collapsed. Gao Li stepped forward and noticed the scepter beside Loki, cut in 2. The Mind Stone embedded in it had not withstood Maximum Hyper Typhoon. That meant the magic was not the scepter itself, but a part of it. Gao Li moved to study the remains. Fortunately, he was in the World Tree Building and had access to lab equipment. A quick analysis of the residual wave frequencies told him what he needed to know. This wave is very similar to the Time Stone and Space Stone. It's another Infinity Stone. Using practiced precision, Gao Li extracted the Mind Stone from the broken scepter. He'd been working with the Time and Space Stones for a while and knew how to handle Infinity Stones. The third Infinity Stone, the Mind Stone, was now in his possession. By my calculations, the timing is right. Let's check Zia's report. Gao Li tapped into Zia's mission feed, updated in real time. It had not flagged him earlier, so he hadn't rushed. A few minutes into his review, a notification popped up. The Chitauri army has completely collapsed and is using spatial jumps to warp remaining troops back to the Chitauri homeworld in batches. Excellent. This is what I've been waiting for. A cold smile crossed Gao Li's face. The Chitauri had dared to attack Earth. They were going to get a lesson. Gao Li deactivated Hyperform, drew the Lost Driver, and became Kamen Rider Zone. He opened a spatial gate and stepped through. In the vacuum of space, an azure portal opened, and he pushed his head out. The biological armor wasn't meant for the cosmic environment. He needed to act quickly. He closed his eyes and traced the residual spatial fluctuations. He'd arrived in time to capture the trajectory cleanly, then used the zone memory to reverse track the jump coordinates back to the Chitauri homeworld. He hadn't come straight away because he'd spent the intervening time preparing his big gift packages, 100 nuclear bombs acquired through Shocker's resources. Each bomb was set on a timer and coated in faint blue spatial energy, keyed to Zone's power for instantaneous transport. Gao Li slotted the Zone memory into the finisher port. Zone, maximum drive, he called, tapping the slot. Space opened between the Chitauri homeworld and the 100 bombs. In an instant, they were delivered and detonated. Gowli shut the gate the moment before the explosions, keeping his involvement hidden. The yield of each bomb was significant. Gowli didn't intend to annihilate the Chitauri homeworld. He wasn't a monster, but the strike was meant to be decisive enough that the Chitauri would remember it. If other interstellar powers watched on, they would understand that Earth was not to be trifled with. Asgard. Heimdall's report of Loki's death reached Odin and Thor as the dust settled. It all happened so fast, Heimdall had barely managed to alert them. Thor screamed, grief raw and fierce. "No, Loki!" He turned his fury toward Gowli. "I'll make you pay. Stop!" Odin seized Thor with a grip that never loosened. "You are no match for Gowli. Would you throw your life away foolishly? Do you want to join your brother early?" "But father," Thor demanded, turning to him but saw only sorrow in Odin's face. Odin closed his eyes. "I feel the same as you, son, but everything meets an end eventually. Loki's time has come sooner than expected. There is no need for excessive grief." Thor fought against his father's calm. "How can you say that? I want to confront Gowli myself. By what right did he kill my brother?" Odin's voice went cold. "Do you remember when Loki manipulated the destroyer to kill people? Do you not recall when Loki came to Earth and fought you? Even though damage was limited, several mortals died because of it." Gowli could say, rightfully, that this is a life for a life. To him, Loki is no more special than any Earthling. The Asgardians are not angels to him. Odin's words were blunt. Besides, Gowli's country has a law, what you would call a castle doctrine. Loki invaded his home. By that law, what Gowli did is legal in his eyes and compliant with his nation's statutes. There is no legal recourse. Thor's shoulders sank. He'd been tempered by his experiences on Earth. He could not argue nobility against an Earthling like Gowli. Odin shook his head. "You are no longer young. You must see how the world truly works. Might makes right. Truth belongs to the strong. Now Gowli is stronger. Asgard once ruled the 9 realms because we were stronger then." Defeated, Thor went quiet. "You should go home and recover," Odin said. "Don't go to Earth for now. Gowli will be Asgard's insurance. Avoid conflict with him." "I understand." Thor's reply was flat. He left the palace with heavy steps. Back on Earth, Gowli had other fires to put out. Consortium X and TPC had publicly appeared, and a raft of political and organizational problems needed immediate attention. But this had all been anticipated. Shocker had prepared well. Pierce, as chairman of the World Security Council, pulled every lever: political donations, influence, back-channel favors. Shocker members occupied high government positions in several countries, even more than one in the U.S. Congress. With those levers, recognition of TPC by nations around the world was advanced smoothly. TPC, the top transnational joint organization, was officially established. SGILD, which had occupied a similar space, was folded under TPC's command. Nick Fury, who had always kept his cool, was stunned in public for once. "What is this? One moment of inattention, and I have a new superior?" Nick clenched his jaw. The move had the backing of the World Security Council and high-level politicians. There was nothing Fury could do. He didn't assume TPC was evil outright. The name and stated mission sounded benevolent, and if Earth would be safer under a unified authority, he was willing to bide his time and see who was pulling the strings. The answer came quickly. The director of the Earth Peace United Organization, TPC, was announced as Gori Parker, major shareholder of the Yggdrasil Foundation and a principal stakeholder in Consortium X. Nick Fury, huh? Gowli's first directive as TPC director was to establish a special operations unit within the organization. Fury read the internal plan and fell momentarily speechless again. Nick stared at the roster again. It looked far too similar to his own Avengers initiative. Did Gowli really copy him? The new team Gowli had put together was called the Global Unlimited Task Squad, abbreviated GUTS, with the codename Victory Team. The field operatives were Hawkeye, Clint Barton, Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and Kamen Rider 2, Bucky Barnes. The team captain, also a field operative and commander, was Kamen Rider 1, Steve Rogers. Their technical support ace, the team's trump card, was Hulk, Bruce Banner. Nick's eyes lingered on one item he hadn't expected. Tony Stark, who had once declined to join Nick's Avengers, had agreed to come on board as a consultant out of respect for Gowli. It was exactly the dream team Nick had wanted to assemble, but Gao Li had beat him to it, using his broader influence and legitimate position in S.H.I.E.L.D. to pull it together. Natasha and Clint had been Nick's old subordinates, but Tony and Bruce were harder to recruit. Only Gao Li's connections had made it possible. Nick couldn't help feeling a little sour. The Avengers were gone, replaced by this victory team. A year had passed, and Gao Li wasn't in any hurry to go back to the DC universe. He still had business to finish in Marvel. His main focus now was strengthening the entire victory team. If he was going to brand them as his team, he couldn't leave them at the Avengers' original level of power. That would be embarrassing for him and for TPC. A name change alone wouldn't do. The first round of upgrades for Steve and Bucky came from the full suite of Fadian Group technology Gao Li had acquired earlier. In truth, most of Gao Li's improvements across the victory team were built on Fadian tech. It turned out that Fadian Group's real edge was in the Marvel Universe, not the DC Universe where the company originally existed. For the Kamen Rider modifications, surgical augmentation was a natural first step. After obtaining metal cluster hopper technology, Gao Li began to dissect its nanotech components and apply them to other projects. Kamen Rider V3, Shocker's upgraded take on Kamen Rider 1 and 2, relied on nanorobot-based surgical modification to boost all its stats. By this point, Gao Li had already integrated a lot of advanced black tech, so creating comparable nanorobots was no longer difficult. It didn't take long before he had developed nanotech-based surgical modifications that could be completed almost instantly, and thanks to biological knowledge gleaned from Supreme Evolution without harmful side effects. Gao Li performed the secondary modification surgeries on Steve and Bucky, and on himself. If there was a cheat, everyone should share it. Besides, he had built it. The tests showed measurable improvement, but not enough. Their punching power rose to 4 tons, kicking to 12 tons, and their jump height to 18 meters. Useful, but still insufficient to face escalating threats. The surgical upgrades had reached their practical limits. Gao Li needed to enhance them through external means, specifically by improving their Kamen Rider transformations. The original Typhoon belts Gao Li had given Steve and Bucky did not add much raw power. They mainly protected the wearer and enhanced the senses. There simply wasn't room in the belt to pack more. But with nanotechnology, that limitation vanished. Gao Li spent a night in the lab and turned both Typhoon belts into double Typhoon belts, doubling energy supply efficiency and packing a complete Kamen Rider armor inside, miniaturized with nanotech. He called it Kamen Rider G5, a modified, improved descendant of the conceptual G4. G5 retained all G4 capabilities but used nanotech to shrink and conform the armor to the wearer. Gao Li also turned it into amplification-type armor, its power stacks with the wearer's own. For nostalgia, he styled the armor to match the classic looks of Kamen Rider 1 and 2. Functionally, it was equivalent, and appearance didn't change performance. G4 itself had been a technological iteration in Gao Li's mind. The AI architecture he used before building Zia was based on the G3X AI chip and had been iterating upward. Gao Li had the capability to produce a G4 suit, though he'd never actually built one before. His projects had always taken priority. Now, however, the G4 design found purpose, upgraded into the amplification G5, and packed into the double Typhoon belts for Steve and Bucky. Testing was gratifying. After transforming, Steve and Bucky's punching power combined their 4 tons with the armor's 4 tons for a total of 8. Their kicking power combined the original 12 tons with the armor's 13 for 25. Their jump height rose from 18 meters to 43. Finally, there was a clear gap between human form and Kamen Rider form. Transformation now achieved a real, tangible increase in combat capability. All done, Gao Li said, satisfied. Next, Natasha and Clint. Natasha and Clint were elite agents, but against supernatural or alien threats, they still lagged behind. Gao Li had already spent extra time upgrading his oldest friends, so for Natasha, who had merely worked for him, and for the less familiar Clint, he took a simpler route. He manufactured a pair of V1 drivers and 2 progress keys, the Rising Hopper progress key and the Shooting Wolf progress key, and gave them to the two to try. The progress key technology was adaptable, so even though the AIM's shot riser wasn't Fadian tech, Gowli could replicate compatible keys. He tailored the shooting wolf key to fit Hawkeye's marksmanship, since Clint preferred ranged combat. He also encrypted each 01 driver via satellite Zia, so only the intended user could authorize it and to prevent tech leakage. When Natasha and Clint arrived at the TPC training ground, they looked baffled at the thick card-like devices Gowli handed them. "Is this our new equipment?" Natasha asked. "They're progress keys," Gowli told them. "Natasha, take the rising hopper. Clint, the shooting wolf. Here are your 01 drivers as well." He showed them how to wear the driver, mount it on the waist and lock it into place, then how to operate the key. Press the button and insert it into the driver. He explained the limited use idea. Transformations were best done outdoors because the summoned machinery could easily wreck a building. He reminded them the drivers were authenticated by satellite Zaya and added, "The command word is transform. Don't forget it." They followed his instructions. When they activated the keys, they called out the sequences Gowli taught them. Jump and bullet. They flipped the keys open, extended them toward the drivers, and the devices authorized. From the sky, two massive mechanical figures descended, a towering grasshopper and a huge wolf. They bounded and spun around the training ground, punching craters into the earth. If they'd been inside a building, the roof would have been torn apart. "This is amazing," Natasha breathed. The power before transformation was already intimidating. She couldn't imagine what it would be like after. Clint narrowed his eyes. If these constructs were like summoned beasts, they'd automatically protect the user. That meant it was time to try the full transformation. "Transform," they shouted together, inserting their keys into the drivers with force. "Progress, jump up, rising hopper," Natasha called. "Progress, continuous shooting, shooting wolf," Clint answered. The mechanical grasshopper and wolf split and folded in midair, reforming into battle armor that encased their bodies. Gowli had made special weapons to match their preferences, a compact briefcase-style firearm for Natasha and a briefcase crossbow for Clint, since Clint favored bows. The transformation finished, the new riders stood ready. "Oh, this is Kamen Rider," Natasha said, marveling at the suit and its feel as she tested her grip on the firearm. The training ground echoed with the sound of newfound capability as the Victory Team's latest members took their first steps into a larger world. Clint gripped the bow with a little thrill. This was a brand new sensation. He could feel his dynamic vision had improved dramatically after the transformation, absolutely crucial for an archer. His instincts were right. The shooting wolf enhancement specialized in marksmanship, 8 times normal human dynamic vision, and an ultra-precision firing control system. Even if it weren't used by a seasoned sharpshooter like Clint, a well-trained ordinary soldier could achieve sub-.05mm accuracy on targets within 3 kilometers. What a strange feeling. I feel like I could fly. Natasha had a different reaction. On impulse, she jumped, just to test it, and shot straight up into the sky. "She can jump that high?" Clint stared. Judging by her arc, Natasha's apex was at least 60 meters. This was clearly another kind of enhancement. Nail-like foot reinforcement devices that explosively increased leg strength, giving her enough jumping power to clear 20-story buildings, and frightening kicking force. Clint could already imagine the destructive power when she later used her signature kicks. No wonder her key was called High Jump Locust, while his was Shooting Wolf. The director had tailored the upgrades to each of their specialties. Natasha's opinion of Gowli suddenly brightened, and the annoyance she'd felt over previous overtime at the Yggdrasil Foundation evaporated. Gowli saw their satisfaction and knew the job of bolstering the Victory Team was done. Time to return to the DC universe and take a look. Gowli woke again to the familiar weightless feeling of being submerged in life support. He opened his eyes to the ceiling of the Fadian Group facility and climbed out of the pod. The first thing he did was draw his reward. After the Battle of New York in the Marvel Universe, his influence had spiked, yielding an S-rank prize draw from a single event. Gowli didn't expect much from an S-rank, but it was still something to be glad about. He skipped the usual prayer ritual. Still, when the prize appeared, his eyes widened. It was a physical, immediately usable item. Kamen Rider Kuga's transformation belt, a guru. The moment it materialized, it integrated seamlessly with his body, as if it had always been there. The Amadam Spirit Stone in its center threw off a compelling glow. Gao Li could feel power wrapped inside it. Let's try the transformation. Gao Li struck a pose, syncing mentally with a guru, and shouted, "Transform!" He was no longer a Kamen Rider novice. His fighting will was iron. He had the certainty of an experienced rider. The transformation skipped the growing form and went straight into the red and black mighty form. Gao Li clenched his fist, feeling raw, explosive power. He tested further. A guru contained the 4 basic Kuga forms, Blue Dragon, Pegasus, and Titan, each with distinctive strengths. But Gao Li wasn't content to stop there. What he really wanted was gold power, the core energy of Kuga's rising form, the SS rank equivalent. Gold power's essence was Kuga's ability to absorb and convert external energies for himself, essentially limitless enhancement. Godai Yusuke had awakened rising form with ordinary electrical energy. Gao Li had access to far greater energy reserves. That shouldn't be the problem. The real requirement, he realized, was the rider's will to grow. The Spirit Stone responds to a strong desire to become stronger. Rick, the ancient first Kuga, had remained at the 4 basic forms because he was so dominant he had no burning urge to ascend. The Spirit Stone had no reason to answer him. Gao Li, however, could manufacture that desire. He had Lord of Magic authority and a deep knowledge of hypnosis and night magic. If willpower was lacking, he could add it artificially. Gao Li moved to his private outdoor training ground, closed his eyes, and began the self-hypnosis ritual. He stoked a fierce determination. He wanted to be stronger. He wanted to master this power and become unrivaled. As the hypnosis took hold, the surrounding ambient magic gathered into a vortex. He drew that power into himself, letting it flow through muscles and bones. It wasn't enough. He intensified the hypnotic suggestion until his will reached new heights. His eyes shone with conviction. Then he called down electricity. The air around him grew scorching as he channeled night magic into a focused strike. Lightning ripped the sky and descended toward him. Under his control, it wasn't normal lightning. It was amplified, ripping through the air and straight at Gao Li. As Lord of Magic, he could absorb such forces harmlessly. What would be destructive to others, he could tame and reforge. He closed his eyes and let the bolt run through him, from fingertip to toe, through every pore. The energy no longer felt hostile. Under his will, it became docile, becoming part of him. He guided that power into the Aguru belt at his waist, coaxing it to transmute into gold power. The transformation was like music. The air trembled with electric currents as he reached a transformation pose and whispered to the Spirit Stone. "I feel it. Rising," he thought. He let gold power surge and understood, bit by bit, its nature. It was not a force of pure destruction, but one oriented toward protection and creation. It evolved toward the red, not the black. He pictured it sheltering those he loved, a light to illuminate the dark world. Super transformation. Gold power fully integrated, he rose into rising mighty form, and the Aguru belt took on a golden sheath. When he opened his eyes, he had mastered the power. Triumph lit his face. He had forced an S-rank item up to SS rank, enough of an achievement, but gold power still had more potential. If rising form was one step beyond the basic, there was another step, the path toward ultimate, or as Gao Li put it, amazing form. He pushed further. A mighty spell flung energy into the sky. Bolts gathered and coalesced into a thunderous dragon of light that split the night. Gao Li began to circulate his magic, creating an incredible suction from his body. The lightning poured in, and he devoured it like a bottomless black hole. As the raw thunder condensed, he refined it into purer gold power. His skin flushed golden, as if he were becoming a man of metal. The electric energy purified, became stronger and more controllable. Joy and excitement surged through him. He knew he was converting massive electrical power into massive gold power. Second reinforcement, second sublimation. He drove the amplified gold power into Aguru. Pain and vibration shot through him as the energy restructured his muscles and bones. He swallowed, bracing against the overwhelming sensation. Section 144, Gao Li gritted his teeth and endured the pain. He knew it was a necessary step for his evolution. After an unknown stretch of time, he suddenly opened his eyes. A powerful force surrounded him, a golden power elevated to its extreme, wild and potent, like a sleeping leviathan in the deep sea, ready to lash out. Gowley's palms still trembled from the intensity, but he understood the next phase. He had to tame this gold power. If he couldn't control it, he would become a walking weapon, a biological monstrosity. Exactly the wrong path. The fate Godai Yusuke had nearly suffered. It had to be the red eye. Gowley took a deep breath and began to guide the power. As the gold power settled into him, his body transformed. His muscles tightened and compacted, his bones stiffened, his skin grew as tough as metal. Super transformation, amazing mighty, he heard in his head. Black and gold light radiated from him, then blue, green, and purple flashed in turn, lighting up the night sky. Amazing blue dragon, amazing Pegasus, amazing Titan. The forms surged through him. It's done. Power filled him. Joy and exhilaration roared in his chest. He had taken a huge step. He had completed the evolution into the amazing form. Even a light jump shot him into the air as if he could fly. Tens of tons of striking force, dozens of meters of jumping power. Gowley was practically a miniature Superman, even without relying on memory or magic. The destructive power of his ultimate moves was terrifying. In the Rising Mighty stage, a rider kick could create a nuclear-like blast with a 3-kilometer radius. In Amazing Mighty form, by Gowley's calculations, a full-power rider kick could reach a 5-kilometer blast radius. That estimate assumed maximum dispersion to increase range. He could concentrate the power to reduce blast radius and instead produce an intense column of fire bright enough to turn night into day. Just as Gowley began to wonder whether he could push toward the ultimate path, a figure streaked across the sky from the horizon with astonishing speed. He wore a crimson cape and a tight blue suit, Superman Clark Kent. I saw the abnormal lightning and thunder from afar and wondered if it might be Mr. Wayne. Turns out it was you, Clark said as he landed. Clark? Gowley blinked, surprised. You came here dressed like that for a reason? Clark planted his hands on his hips. I wanted to tell you, I'm officially making my debut. Debut? Gowley was momentarily baffled. You mean, like an idol? Clark blinked in confusion. Gowley cleared his throat and got it straight. You mean you're going to be a superhero, right? Clark nodded. I want to help people, just like my father said. Clark meant both his biological father and the man who raised him. Yes, Clark still had both parents. In the original history, Jonathan had been reluctant to let Clark reveal himself too early, and that choice cost him his life in a storm. But everything had changed after Gowley's earlier appearance. Gowley had done nothing dramatic. His presence alone altered timelines. Because of Gowley, Clark went to the Fortress of Solitude sooner and learned about the broader world of the extraordinary. He told Jonathan everything when he returned, and Jonathan realized Clark's powers were part of a larger reality. There were many extraordinary people out there. He stopped forbidding Clark from acting, and, when the storm came, Clark was able to rescue him. The experience transformed Jonathan and Martha. They hoped Clark would save others from disasters, natural or man-made, just as he had saved them. Clark was more than willing. Yes, Clark said, I heard about Batman and Fang in Gotham City. So you take them as role models? Gowley asked, intrigued. Clark shook his head. Not really. Their style is different. We both reject killing, though. If I had to choose a role model on the superhero path, I'd pick you. Gowley blinked. Me? I don't even consider saving people my job. Clark smiled. You'll see. You kid, grown enough to keep secrets from me now? Gowley teased, lightly punching Clark. The once simple farm boy had matured into someone slyer. Gowley wouldn't press him. He could wait for whatever news came. Later that night, while most of the city still slept, a sharp explosion ripped through the quiet. The blast tore into the sky and shattered the night's calm. Buildings trembled, people gasped and screamed. A disaster had erupted. A tall building was engulfed in roaring flames, the inferno lighting the skyline. People poured into the street, firelight painting terrified expressions across their faces. What happened? Chemical explosion? Is everybody okay? Miles away, Clark somehow sensed the commotion. He burst through his window and shot into the air, heading toward the flames with super speed. The building had become a sea of fire. The blast had shattered its structure, flinging debris and dust into the night. Thick smoke choked the streets. People ran in panic, cries and laments rising and falling. Clark hovered above the chaos, his gaze like a beacon. He looked resolute, focused only on the lives trapped below. With the speed and grace of a hummingbird he dove. He found his first target quickly, a woman pinned beneath a broken floor slab. "Help! Someone help me!" she cried, fear plain in her eyes. Clark leapt like a lithe predator, lifted and tossed the slab aside, helped her up, and shielded her with his arms as bricks rained down. He led her to safety in moments. He moved through the site with efficiency that bordered on clinical, rescuing dozens in seconds. "One left," Clark muttered. X-ray vision found a little girl trapped deep in the blaze. He accelerated and appeared beside her in an instant. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." He soothed the child with a gentle hand and carried her out through heat and falling debris. On the ground, witnesses stared as Clark descended, handing the child to her tearful mother. "Oh my God, thank you," she sobbed. "You saved my baby." Firefighters and paramedics had arrived and began dousing flames, shoring up dangerous sections, creating escape routes. Police directed the crowd and worked to restore order. Panic eased as the injured were treated and removed. A reporter pushed forward and thrust a microphone at Clark. "Sir, may I ask your name? Any words for us after such a heroic act?" Clark smiled softly. "I can't give my name. Call me Superman." He added quietly, "I did what anyone should do. Anyone can be a hero if they choose to be." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, awed and grateful. Then Clark surprised everyone with an odd request. "To everyone I rescued who hasn't yet gone to the hospital, I'd like $1 as compensation. If you've already been to the hospital, please donate $1 to charity on my behalf." A stunned hush fell over the people. The reporter frowned, unsure how to react. Then, the rescued, those who could, reached into their pockets and handed Clark $1 each. Others in the crowd, moved, offered far more. Clark accepted small bills with a smile, but politely refused larger sums. "No need, thank you," he told them. $1 is enough. I've received sufficient compensation." Applause broke out again. People admired the humility behind the gesture. Clark rose into the sky and slipped away toward the horizon. Far above the city, a plane began to suffer a critical malfunction, its alarms blaring as it faltered, on a collision course with the densely populated urban sprawl below. Clark reacted instantly. He shot into the sky and, combining his raw strength with a faint bioelectrical aura, seized the stricken plane and yanked it back into something like a stable attitude. It was obvious, though, that he couldn't keep it airborne safely. The risk was too great. In the end, Clark supported the fuselage from underneath and guided the aircraft into an emergency landing. A disaster had been averted. All the passengers survived. They stumbled off the plane, shaken but alive, and showered Clark with grateful thanks and cheers. He didn't strike a grand, heroic pose. Instead, he walked up to the passengers and, in a calm tone, made a small request. "Hello, everyone. You've probably seen me on the news. I'm Superman," Clark introduced himself. "I have a principle. When I save someone, I ask for a small token of compensation. $1 per person, please. Thank you." The passengers exchanged glances. It had been in the papers, the dollar thing, so they weren't surprised, and the choice was obvious. Life or $1? They fished bills out of pockets and handed Clark the tiny fee. One man, curiosity overcoming gratitude, asked, "We're all very grateful. Please don't take offense, but why? Why do you do this?" Clark smiled. "I take it to prove that saving people has value, that doing good deserves recognition." Many of the passengers looked thoughtful. Some still didn't quite understand, but they all handed over $1. And so it went over the next few months. Every time Clark saved people, he asked, symbolically, for $1 from each person he'd saved. If someone truly couldn't afford $1, Clark insisted on taking some small possession instead. He had to be given something. Some people tried to cheat, slipping away trackers or hiding things, but Clark's super senses found them every time, rendering those efforts useless. Society discussed Superman's behavior endlessly, but few attacked him for it. The motive was obvious. $1 didn't make him rich. He usually stopped disasters early, limiting casualties to a few dozen at most, often only 10 or 20 people per incident, so his haul was negligible. It was symbolic, a statement rather than a business model. Gowley watched the reports and smiled. So this was what he'd meant by taking him as an example. He remembered the first time he'd met Clark, how he'd argued against Jonathan Kent's pure, help without expectation teaching, persuading Clark to insist on some compensation so people would recognize the value of saving lives. That lesson seemed to have taken. With Superman's trajectory secured, Gao Li's attention in the DC universe wound down for a while. His other projects, launching the satellite Ze, finishing the TPC technology, went onto the back burner. He felt a tug of homesickness. Gotham, Bruce, Alfred, he missed them. He missed Lightwayne the most. Originally, Light had accompanied Gao Li everywhere, Gotham, Metropolis, until Gao Li settled on the common choice parents make when they don't have time: leave the child with the older generation. He had sent Light back to Gotham for Alfred to raise. Alfred had been happy to take the boy in. The old man loved children, and Light was like a grandson. After finishing some work on the new armor, Gao Li took a private jet to Gotham. He still hadn't landed on a better name than Bat Armor 2, which felt unimaginative, but he'd leave that decision for someone else. At Wayne Manor, Alfred picked him up in the car, and Lightwayne waved from the back seat. "Daddy!" Light called, his speech normal and clear after months of learning. Alfred had not been lying. Light was bright and quick, a little genius, playful and affectionate. Gao Li scooped him up and ruffled his ears and tail. It felt so good to touch him again. "Lightwayne, have you been good at home?" Light nodded fiercely. "Lightwayne was very good. No trouble for a whole year." Gao Li froze. Alfred turned with a puzzled look. "Did you say a year?" he asked. "Daddy wasn't home for over a year," Light said innocently. Gao Li narrowed his eyes. "Do you know where Daddy went?" "Metropolis." Light hesitated, then added, "Maybe New York?" Alfred blinked. "Did you go to New York, Mr. Gao Li?" Gao Li brushed it off vaguely, but his head was buzzing. He hadn't been to New York while living in the DC universe. He'd spent over a year in the Marvel universe. How did Lightwayne know about it? "Because I dreamt about it," Light said, as if that explained everything. Gao Li let out a breath. His heart hammered. Of course, Lightwayne was a life form born from the god's origin Gao Li had acquired. Gao Li had once stamped that origin with a debt mark, binding it into a power tied to his own identity as a lord of magic. When his soul traveled through the Marvel universe, that imprint kept a faint connection between him and Light's consciousness. Light could dream fragments of Gao Li's experiences. That fit perfectly. Could he exploit that link? Could he take Light to the Marvel universe one day? The idea spun through his mind as he rode back to Wayne Manor. He first went to see Bruce and handed him the new armor. "Bruce, give this armor a name," Gao Li said after explaining its functions. Bruce thought a moment. "Call it Bat Armor 2? It's the second suit in the line." Gao Li stared. Brothers had no taste for names, apparently. Bruce hesitated, then said, "There's another matter I wanted to discuss." He looked uncomfortable. "A while ago, I saw a circus accident. A famous performer couple fell to their deaths in front of their son, Dick Grayson." Gao Li guessed why Bruce looked troubled. Seeing a child witness such a tragedy must have dredged up Bruce's own traumatic memories of losing his parents. "Do you want to sponsor him? Adopt him?" Gao Li asked. "That's your choice. You don't need my permission." Bruce admitted, "I do want to adopt him, but I'm not sure about one thing, about letting him meet Lightwayne." Gao Li blinked. "Why?" Light's eyes can be explained as contacts. His nails and fangs can be worked around, but his wolf ears and tail aren't human. "You worry about exposing Dick to the supernatural?" "That's right," Bruce said. "If he can stay in the ordinary world, that would be best. It's safer." Gao Li shook his head. "That's unrealistic. You can try to keep Dick away from the supernatural, but the supernatural isn't going to stay away. There's a magic world out there, and beings like Superman will become more common. The line between ordinary life and extraordinary things is already blurring. It'll be impossible to shield him forever." Bruce's face grew serious. He had been tracking Superman, collecting every scrap of information, and the existence of such power unsettled him. Unchecked, someone like Superman could be catastrophic if he turned hostile. But Gao Li's point was practical. The world was changing. Convinced, Bruce completed the adoption a few days later. He brought Dick to Wayne Manor. "This is Alfred. This is your uncle Gao Li, and this is, consider him your cousin, Lightwayne." Dick greeted Alfred and Gao Li shyly. When his eyes fell on Lightwayne, he froze. The boy did indeed look unusual, like someone permanently in a costume. He was unsure whether to be impressed or bewildered. Section 146, Dick had to admit that Lightwayne's props were impressive. Even he, raised in a circus, couldn't find any flaws. The fake animal ears and tails looked frighteningly real. They even twitched. Maybe it was some high-tech gadget. Is this what rich people's toys are like? Hey, call me Big Brother, Lightwayne crowed, hands on his hips, only to be scooped up by Gao Li like a kitten. Relax, Dick. We're family now, Gao Li said. You can get to know Wayne Manor by staying here with Alfred for a while. Alfred led Dick on a tour of the manor, while Lightwayne, true to form, followed Alfred and sniffed at Dick like a curious animal. Dick blanched. Do I smell weird? Lightwayne scratched an ear. There's a mix of lion and tiger on you, and you ate a McDonald's cheeseburger before coming here, right? It's fine. I just wanted to get used to your scent. Dick stared. What kind of habit was this? It really felt animalistic. No, this wasn't just cosplay. Lightwayne could actually smell what he'd eaten. Was that even human? Alfred, always composed, explained, Master Dick, Master Lightwayne is not human but a wolf. He has a number of unusual habits. You'll get used to them. Dick's questions piled up, but he was adaptable. After all, he would later become Robin and Nightwing. If Bruce Wayne, Gotham's richest man, could adopt someone like him, then a few more fantastical family members wasn't the strangest thing in the world. Alfred and Gao Li were kind and genuine. For the first time in his life, Dick felt the warmth of family. That warmth, however, was abruptly cut off by an event that would shake the entire world. A spaceship from a distant planet silently descended over Earth. The moment it arrived, radio transmissions went dead, television screens went black, and then a single solemn voice filled every speaker on the planet. It sounded as if it had risen from an ancient frozen well, deep, cold, and impossibly old. You are not alone. A face appeared on every screen, a being physically indistinguishable from humans, clear skin, sharp eyes, curly hair. I am General Zod of a distant planet. You have sheltered one of my kind among you. He resembles you and has lived among you for years. Today, I demand you hand him over. Kal-El, I give you 24 hours to surrender. Do not let your decision bring disaster to your entire planet. This is your final ultimatum. The words echoed through cities and villages, and the world fell silent. An alien had lived on Earth under human guises? The announcement spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled into emergency sessions. Scientists and planners assessed the alien ship's capabilities. It had seized global radio waves and was able to translate languages in real time, technology far beyond human reach. Public reaction was mixed. Panic and outrage, curiosity, fear, calls for diplomacy, and calls for military action. International organizations and the United Nations tried to coordinate a response. Meanwhile, everyone wanted to know, who was the alien hiding on Earth? Naturally, Superman, Clark Kent, was the prime suspect. He looked human enough, but possessed powers humans had never seen. Gao Li had a laboratory in Wayne Manor. When he first arrived in the DC universe, it had been a convenient base, and over time he upgraded its equipment. Now Gao Li had risen to an unparalleled level here. He no longer fretted about being targeted by Batman, and he and Bruce were on good terms. He worked openly in the manor, iterating flying and electrical systems, pushing to develop Kamen Rider 02. Though Kamen Rider's 02 might not be the strongest or fastest of his rider forms, it had distinctive strengths: future inference and quantum realm leaping, fields Gao Li knew less about but found fascinating. Today he was deep into Kamen Rider 02 research. He was also one of the last people on Earth to see Zod's broadcast. The Kryptonian transmission had simply failed to breach Gao Li's systems. Kryptonian tech couldn't get through his defenses. Gao Li listened as Clark explained everything. To Clark, Gao Li was a mentor, someone he trusted when he didn't know what to do. Gao Li didn't offer a neat solution to the impossible choice between Earth's safety and Clark's life. Instead, he refused to force the decision on him. What do you think? This is your life. You should decide. Clark admitted, "My gut says Zod can't be trusted. Even if I surrender, I can't guarantee Earth's safety." "Then pretend to surrender, see what Zod wants," Gowlee suggested. "If you hand yourself over, whatever Zod plans should reveal itself." Clark froze. "What if Zod is hostile? Once I surrender, I'll be defenseless. Every one of them is Kryptonian. They should be as strong as I am." Gowlee shrugged. "And even if you refuse, how can you defeat dozens or hundreds of Kryptonians alone?" Clark was stumped. Gowlee had a point. Then Gowlee said quietly, almost offhand, "So in the end, I need you to hand it over." Clark asked, voice small, "Why do you need the Codex?" "Because," Zod said, "with it, Kryptonians can be reborn on Earth." As he spoke, an image formed in Clark's mind, the phantom projector descending above Earth. A beam shot from the ship and struck the ground, lifting continents as if they were being rearranged. Clark watched in terror as Zod outlined the plan, then managed to ask the only thing he could think of. If Kryptonians are reborn, what will happen to the people of Earth? Section 147, Rebirth must have a foundation. Your father knew that. The spiritual world shifted again. Beneath Clark's feet, a sea of human skeletons rose up. Goosebumps prickled his skin as he felt himself dragged into a mountain of corpses and a tide of blood. "No, Zod, no, I won't help you." "Then who will you help, Carl?" "No, Zod, no." Clark jerked awake, his body locked to the experimental table, unable to move. He strained against the restraints, tough, but in the Kryptonian environment, his strength was far less than on Earth. The chains held fast. "Mr. Wayne? Where are you? Mr. Wayne?" A voice, Gowlee, suddenly whispered in his ear. "Stop shouting. What if you attract other Kryptonians?" "Mr. Wayne!" Clark's relief was palpable. He hurriedly explained Zod's plan. As he spoke, a waist-high magic array shimmered into being in front of him, a small portable ring that opened like a door. "This connecting array links this space to Earth's environment," Gowlee said. "It'll temporarily restore an Earth-like field here. Use it to escape." Clark felt strength flood back. With a wrenching effort, he snapped the restraints and pushed himself off the table. "I won't let them succeed." He launched into the air, intent on tearing through the ship and destroying it. "Hey, stop! Wait! Hold on!" Gowley's voice cut sharp. Clark nearly injured himself as he came to an abrupt halt. "What's wrong, Mr. Wayne?" "This route is useless. You won't be able to destroy the ship while the array is active." "Huh?" "If I keep the Earth field active so you keep your strength, other Kryptonians will too. Don't forget they have masks. They won't feel the loss of atmosphere. They'll be fine." "Oh, that's true. What then? What should I do?" Clark's sheepish scratching of his head brought a long sigh from Gowlee. The man who'd argued he was replacing the future Batman in everyone's plan sounded for once like the most practical mind in the room. "You escape first. Once you're clear, I'll shut the array and then blow the ship. I'll try to destroy as many Kryptonians as possible while they're weakened." Clark's face went pale. "You're going to kill them all?" Gowley's tone hardened. "What do you want me to do instead? You can't stop them by yourself. If dozens of Kryptonians with your strength survive, they'll slaughter untold numbers of people on Earth. The deaths will be on your conscience if you stop me now. Don't be naive. This is an extinction-level threat." Clark couldn't find a reply. His kindness pushed him to hope there was a better way, but remaining silent, he had no means to prevent Gowlee from following through. Gowlee didn't soften. "Besides, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm warning you because of our relationship. You don't have the power to stop me. If you want to stay and die with them, that's your choice. Think of your parents. I'll give you 30 seconds to decide." Gowlee started a countdown on his phone. Clark's indecision wrestled with the cruel reality. Maybe he could save the Kryptonians, but could he then keep them from destroying Earth? The faces of Jonathan and Martha flashed in his mind. With seconds left, Clark propelled himself through the ship's hull and out into space. He had no other choice. "All right, time's up." Gowlee's eyes gleamed. Vast magic surged and coalesced into an immense array that wrapped the Kryptonian ship like a predatory dragon. The ship that had seemed invulnerable quivered under that power. Panels bowed, joints failed, the hull fragmented into 1,000 metallic pieces that scattered into the void like fallen stars. Then a blinding eruption of light bloomed from the ship's core, as if an artificial sun had blossomed inside it. "No." Clark had to look away. Gowlee's spell detonated with a force that felt like the sky itself was being ripped open. Debris and energy roared outward, painting the surrounding darkness with brilliant fire. Clark, already far from the wreck, watched helplessly. Then he heard his own voice in his ear. "Mr. Wayne, they're all still alive." A conflicting tide of relief and horror crashed over him. Relief that the ship's occupants survived the blast. Horror because many of them were unconscious only thanks to armor and technology, while a few, genetically predestined warriors, remained alert. Gowlee's voice had an edge of frustration. Merely weakening them wasn't enough. The Kryptonians' high-tech battle armor bought them survival. Its kinetic buffering systems and the armor's hardness shrugged off much of the blast. Gowlee's magic had penetrated some buffer layers, sending many Kryptonians whose genes weren't tuned for combat into comas, but those like Zod and his Lieutenant Fiora, born and bred for war, remained upright and furious. With the ship destroyed, they would soon be bathed in the yellow sun again and recover quickly. "Bastards! What have you done?" Zod howled. Without the ship, they couldn't terraform Earth, and he was certain the attackers were Earthlings. "Earthlings, I'll make you pay in blood." He dove like a meteor, eyes burning red with murderous intent. "No, you won't." Clark intercepted, his ability to fly, something other Kryptonians had not yet mastered, giving him an edge. He met Zod in the sky with a crash that echoed like thunder, grappling with a madman as others with warrior genes hurtled toward the ground with equal violence. Clark's back slicked with cold sweat. He finally understood Gowlee's warning. There were simply too many enemies for him to halt alone. "Don't panic. I'll handle the others," Gowlee said calmly in his ear, and Clark felt steadied by that voice. "Understood. Be careful," Clark replied, focusing every ounce of his energy on Zod. Gowlee shut the connecting array and began relaying coordinates to Zia to locate where the Kryptonians would land. Meanwhile, those criminals in battle armor realized what had happened. Fiora's lip curled in fury. Her vision pierced obstacles and ranged long distances. Their super senses let them coordinate as they fell. Regroup on the way. Kill every earthling you encounter. They descended like gods of destruction. The first impact was a thunderous roll that shook the landscape. Buildings crumpled beneath blows that would have torn apart steel columns. Bridges splintered, streets heaved. Where they stepped, homes were flattened and trees were uprooted. The city's lights flickered and died beneath an iron-gray sheen of armor. Their assaults were merciless and indiscriminate. With single, sweeping blows, they demolished entire blocks. Explosions flared. Fires ran like veins through the night. Screams rose, but were swallowed by the din of devastation. In alleyways, children cried and glass rained down. On boulevards, people fled, only to be cut off. What had been a bustling town dissolved into ash and ruin in moments. The military finally arrived, though not wholly unprepared, having been tracking Clark since his surrender. But even their best equipment and elite forces were dwarfed by the Kryptonians' power and numbers. Tanks, aircraft, heavy artillery, technology that dominated human battlefields meant very little against beings who tore buildings apart with their hands. The commander's eyes were rimmed with red, fury and dread mingled on his face. He had seen the scale of the threat. He knew other cities would fall if this wasn't stopped. The confrontation hardened into a tragic tableau. A disciplined human force, arrayed against what felt like gods, come to war. Each moment the Kryptonians advanced, the ground beneath humanity's feet grew more unstable. Section 148. This was a battle with a vast disparity in strength. The U.S. military's tanks and armored vehicles opened fire first, trying to overwhelm the Kryptonians with sheer firepower. But the steel behemoths were useless against them. The Kryptonians moved through the hail of bullets as if dancing. Not a single shot struck them. Planes and helicopters screamed overhead, the sky filling with flames and smoke. Fiora looked at the chaos with utter calm. She and her people were predators, cold, remorseless hunters waiting for their prey to show signs of exhaustion. Tank shells slammed into Kryptonian armor but did no real damage. Aircraft twisted and rolled to escape the onslaught, but piloting skill was meaningless against the Kryptonians' raw power. The Kryptonian Legion struck like a gale, explosions sounding like thunderous music. The military's stout defensive line folded like paper under the assault. Smoke and debris filled the air. Soldiers screamed as their formations collapsed. "We can't win. Monsters. Absolute monsters." The desert rang with the cries of men who had long expected to die but never imagined such swift, utter defeat. Back at the command center, frantic reports came in. Units under merciless attack, communications breaking down. Every Kryptonian strike was precise and lethal. The military teetered on the brink of collapse. Brave resistance flickered like candles in the wind, snuffed out one by one. In the midst of the onslaught, Fiora unleashed an earth-shaking roar that rolled across the battlefield. At her call, the Kryptonian warriors gathered instantly, an iron torrent launching a final charge. The soldiers were defenseless before that tide, seized and tossed aside like toys. Weapons and armor proved meaningless. The military's once proud force, so formidable by Earth standards, found itself shockingly fragile against an extraterrestrial threat. The Kryptonians' victory seemed certain, an unstoppable night that devoured light and life. The last pockets of resistance were crushed. The command center fell silent. Then, like a rainbow pillar of light, something appeared on the field. Beneath that prism of radiance, two figures stepped forward. One was Gao Li, who, after studying the theory and mechanics of the Bifrost, had managed to recreate the bridge through magic in this universe. Beside him stood a bewildered young man. "Oh my God, is this really magic? Mr. Wayne, can I learn it?" the young man blurted. Gao Li patted his shoulder. "Barry, focus on the task. Magic can come later if you have the aptitude." Barry Allen blinked. "You just grabbed me and teleported me here. I still don't know what's going on." Gao Li explained briefly. He'd used his wealth and reach, controlling the Fadian group alongside the Wayne group, to locate extraordinary individuals across the world. Barry was one of them. Finding the famous members of the Justice League, especially those whose abilities mattered most, had been a priority. Flash was essential. In desperate circumstances, Barry's speed could change everything. Barry had only recently gained his powers, but Gowli recognized the Speed Force potential in him. Barry had created Speed Force by running rather than merely tapping into it. Gowli believed Barry could perform something extraordinary. "Barry, I'll repeat the plan," Gowli said. "You need to run until you exceed the speed of light and briefly reverse time to bring the dead back." "That's beyond my current ability here. I can perceive timelines, but I can't change them, yet," Barry said. "You're right to be cautious," Gowli replied, "but you won't be undoing a huge span of time. You'll reverse only a very small interval. The less you manipulate time, the smaller the consequences. If you go back only a few minutes, space-time can self-correct. But if you try to change something huge, like saving someone who died years ago, you risk tearing the timeline. That's how things become catastrophic." Barry thought of the movies that warned about changing the past. "Is there any way to tell how much is safe?" "Follow your instinct," Gowli said. "When you feel you've reached the limit, not your personal limit, but the limit of space-time, stop. It's like stopping before the elastic snaps. Keep it within that margin, and space-time will heal itself." Gowli's words sounded confident because he'd had experience with time-altering forces before. Between encounters with devices and phenomena that could twist time, he had learned the dangers and the boundaries. "All right, I'll start," Barry said. Gowli placed the lost driver on his waist and slotted the shining memory in. With a practiced motion, he transformed. A pillar of sacred light shot up, and a spear manifested in his hand. He pointed it toward Fiora and shouted, "Run, Barry, run!" Their arrival had not gone unnoticed. Fiora had already led her Kryptonians to surround the glowing bridge. Barry, watching their approach with his super-keen perception, saw that their closing speed was only slightly slower than his usual running. "Can I really do this? They don't seem much slower than me," he asked. "Stick to the plan," Gowli said. "I'll draw them. Make me the target." Gowli invoked a spell, Glitter, that conferred perfect physical invulnerability. He banked on the Kryptonians' pride and combat instincts. They looked like trained fighters. If they saw Gowli as a worthy opponent, they'd focus on him and give Barry the opening he needed. Fiora sneered. "You have courage, Earthling, but the courage of a fool." She charged and struck Gowli with a brutal punch. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Fiora felt what it was to hit something that didn't break. Her fingers had hit something absolutely unyielding, and she recoiled in surprise. "Let me return your compliment," Gowli said with a faint smile. He used her momentary shock, seized her wrist, and thrust the spear. The blade slid through armor and flesh as if the armor weren't there. Fiora's chest gaped, blood sprayed like water. The surrounding Kryptonians watched in stunned fury. "Deputy Commander! How is this possible? Impossible!" Their shock cost them time, just enough for Barry to bolt. He ran like a flash of light. In an instant, he was thousands of miles away, accelerating past the speed of light. "Listen, Barry," Gowli had told him earlier. "When you go beyond light speed, you'll see time flowing backward. How far it reverses is up to you." "Is there any standard?" Barry called as he accelerated. "How do I decide?" "Use your intuition," Gowli had said. "Stop when you feel you're close to the limit of space-time, before anything snaps. The moment you sense resistance like a barrier, that's your cue to stop." As Barry pushed on, the world around him began to reverse. Ruined buildings repaired, the dead stirred back to life. Excitement flared in him, but an increasing pressure built in his perception, like a resistance, like a sound barrier. He realized he was approaching the limit Gowli had warned about. He adjusted his course and stopped as the sensation intensified, choosing to end the reversal before reaching the dangerous threshold. In a blink, he reappeared inside Wayne Manor, Gotham City. "Buzz!" He materialized beside Gowli, who had been at a terminal checking data with Zia. Gowli turned, surprised. "Are you Barry Allen?" he asked, already expecting the answer from the files he'd pulled earlier. "Yes, Mr. Wayne," Barry breathed. "Please, listen, I'm from the future." "No time to lose," Gowli cut in. "Give me the coordinates." Barry hesitated for a beat, stunned by Gowli's quickness of mind, then understood. Gowli had done his homework. He knew what Barry could do. Barry gave the coordinates, and the plan moved forward. When Flash suddenly appeared beside him, Gowli immediately realized the only plausible explanation. Flash had been sent by his future self. Gowli was already using Zia to track the Kryptonian's location, so the two facts clicked together. Flash quickly reported coordinates, and magical energy surged around Gowli's hand. A thick Bifrost bridge descended from the sky and swallowed them both in a thunderous roar. The bridge deposited them at the edge of a battered town, the very place the Kryptonians had begun their destruction. Flash's face went pale. Did I not rewind time far enough? I still couldn't get there before they moved. Mr. Wayne, I'll go back again. No. Gowli gripped him to stop him. You just reversed time. Space-time is still repairing itself. If you force another reversal now, it could collapse and rebuild the whole continuum. You've already done enough, Flash said, chastened. I don't even know how badly the future Earth was damaged, but judging by this, you've probably saved tens of millions. Flash bit his lip. The consolation helped. Leave the rest to me. Come here, Glitter. Gowli locked the lost driver onto his arm and took the gleaming, shining memory. Transform. Glitter, Flash echoed. Holy radiance poured out, bathing the ruined town and the blood-red night sky, heralding the arrival of a savior. Across the globe, the U.S. Military Command Center felt like a tomb. The night outside was black and cold. Inside, senior officers sat around a round table, faces grave, while footage of Kryptonians tearing through the city played on the projector. A satellite map scrolled like a silent record of destruction. Skyscrapers crushed in an instant, streets reduced to rubble, whole neighborhoods erased by raw power. What are these things? Can they even be called living? One officer asked, voice tight with disbelief. The images showed relentless animal fury. Anything in the path of the Kryptonians was fragile and fleeting. Commander Jack stared at the screen, pressure like a physical weight on his chest. A seasoned veteran, he had seen much, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. He took a deep breath and scanned the room. Gentlemen, this is an unprecedented threat, he said quietly. Their strength is beyond our estimates. At their current rate of destruction, they are nearly unstoppable. They're fast, they're strong, terrifying, another officer agreed. The sense of helplessness in the room grew. Our police forces are like paper against them, someone said. The military would be no different. We can't just send people to their deaths, the strategic expert argued. We need information, research, reconnaissance, find a weakness. We don't have time for research, another voice snapped. We need to act now. How do we face this force? Jack rubbed his temples. He felt the impossibility of the decision. Then his calm crackled with a call. After it ended, he looked up, pain and resolve mingling in his expression. The president is pushing us. We have to do something. Emily, the deputy commander, leaned forward, eyes searching the screen. We can't just sit here. Suddenly she snapped. Look, there's something new on the battlefield. Everyone swiveled to the satellite feed. At first, they saw a rainbow pillar of light where Flash had arrived. As the view centered, two figures came into focus, standing alone against the flock of Kryptonians, one in a form-fitting crimson suit, the other wearing heavy armor and wielding a long spear, his face obscured by a helmet. Jack stared. A name surfaced from a file he'd memorized. Wait, that armored one. Fang from Gotham City. Gowli had long since reached a peak of power. He could smash Kryptonian armor, kill a Kryptonian outright, and manipulate time acceleration and deceleration. Still, facing a horde, he decided the glitter form was the better choice. No matter how potent the endless golden Yinglong was, it lacked the glitter form's ability to one-shot armored Kryptonians, and the glitter's near-invulnerable defense would vastly increase his margin for error. The only concern left was speed, but Flash solved that. Flash, my movement is slower than theirs. I need you to use your speed to help me strike with my weapon, Gowli said calmly. Flash hesitated. I can't carry people when I move at top speed. They'll either get violently sick or suffer broken bones. That's true for ordinary people, not for me. Trust me, even at light speed, you won't hurt me. Gowli spoke with quiet certainty. Flash knew the truth. Without the speed force coursing through them, passengers suffer from extreme acceleration and air friction. The speed force could shield them partially, but not fully. Still, Flash already pushed himself to the limit to protect others. The consequences of a poorly executed run could be literal incineration from air friction. Yet no matter how severe the heat or friction, the Shining Memory's defense could nullify that damage as long as the glitter form held. If the form remained unbreached, Gao Li would not be knocked back. "All right, I trust you, Mr. Wayne," Flash said, taking a breath. "Also," Gao Li added, "you must use my weapon. If you can't carry my spear, you can't break their armor. The Spear of Destiny has to be linked to my system to reach its full power." "Why not just give me the spear?" Flash asked. Gao Li explained, Lucifer had modified the Spear of Destiny with Gaia memory-type technology. The spear's penetration relies on the Shining Memory's power, and the spear must be synchronized with Gao Li's system to function at maximum effect. In short, it works best in Gao Li's hands. "Okay, I'll do as you say," Flash replied and scratched his cowl. In a crisis, Flash was obedient. He wouldn't press further. "One more thing," Gao Li said. "If the enemy strikes me, don't try to move me. Don't attempt to shield me. You can even hide behind me. They can't harm me." "Seriously?" Flash half remembered the image from before. When Fiora punched Gao Li, he hadn't moved an inch. "I understand, Mr. Wayne." "Good. Let's begin." The Kryptonians roared and surged. There wasn't just one, but several charging as a pack. Flash felt a jolt of fear, then steadied himself. He sped up, keeping himself protected. In raw movement Flash, the Kryptonians were nearly as fast as him and could approach light speed. A peak Superman could even go superluminal with sustained acceleration. But Flash, who channeled the Speed Force, could far exceed their top end, 10 times light speed and beyond, so protecting himself was feasible. He could only watch as Gao Li took the hits. The ruins of the town glowed faintly under a sparse starlit sky. The Kryptonians' armor reflected cold light as they charged like lightning columns. Rubble and broken tiles kicked up beneath their feet. Their approach came like a storm. Their blows landed, a rapid, punishing barrage. Explosions and dust filled the air. And yet Gao Li showed no significant damage. The Kryptonians gaped in disbelief. Their attacks clearly connected, but to them it felt like striking a gentle breeze. "Why isn't he hurt?" one snarled, frustration roaring through the chitin of his voice. "He's absurdly tough." "Does Earth have tech like this?" another demanded. "My hand," a third grunted, clutching where contact had been made. They had never faced an opponent that simply shrugged off their strength. Fiora's face darkened with irritation. "No defense is absolute," she snarled. "Again." She led another coordinated assault, while Gao Li stood alone at the center like a solitary mountain. Time and again they struck. Time and again he barely shifted. His posture was unyielding, his eyes like distant stars, filled with a quiet, unfathomable composure. The Kryptonians pummeled him with everything they had, an ocean of force that should have overwhelmed anyone, and yet it bounced off. Booms echoed through the ruined streets. The air vibrated with each impact. For all their fury, their offense could not breach him. Up close, they watched him sway minutely and realized the sway was nothing more than Gao Li shifting his weight. He stood as steady as the earth itself, mocking their attempts. How is this possible?" They exchanged bewildered looks. Confusion and dread spread among them. Section 150. Even with their advanced Kryptonian science, they couldn't figure out how it worked. Every punch they threw rebounded with enormous force. This Earthling was like an unbreakable mirror, reflecting their power straight back at them. The Kryptonians groped in the dark, baffled and furious at their own inability to understand the source of his strength. Watching from orbit, the military's satellites relayed the scene in stunned silence. Fang, Gao Li, the man the intelligence services had flagged after his fight with Bane, was doing the impossible. Jack and the other commanders stared, astonished. That kind of defense should not exist. Jack muttered, "Is this his true power?" Their original intel on Gao Li came from how decisively he'd beaten Bane. But Bane, strong by human standards, had been no match for an actual Kryptonian. The High Command had assumed Gao Li, even if stronger than Bane, would still be dwarfed by the aliens. They had badly underestimated him. Worse, Gao Li had clearly infuriated the aliens. Fiora, the deputy commander, grew more and more agitated. Shock, anxiety, and the humiliation of impotent strikes built into a dangerous fury. As a genetically enhanced warrior ranked just below Zod, her combat instincts flared. Her eyes began to burn with heat vision. When a Kryptonian first lets loose heat vision without full control, its power can spike catastrophically. Fiora's beam struck Gao Li's chest with a fierce explosion that sent sparks flying through the ruined square. The blast cleared like a storm, and for a moment the scene looked even more desolate. But Gao Li simply stood there, an almost amused smile on his face, as if mocking Fiora's impotence. Fiora panted. The beam had shattered her mask and left her weakened. Her subordinates hurriedly swapped their own masks onto her so she wouldn't lose consciousness, while a wounded trooper was carried off on a comrade's shoulder. Physically patched up, Fiora felt hollow and helpless inside. How do I break through his defense? She thought. All I can do is keep attacking. Keep hitting him until something gives. But no matter how fast or how many of them struck, Gao Li held his ground. The Kryptonians were like sand scattered by wind, numerous, but irrelevant. They roared and swung, only to be repelled again and again. From the sidelines, Barry, who had perfect dynamic vision at superhuman speed, watched in disbelief. "Mr. Wayne is incredible," Barry gasped. Seeing Gao Li move and resist attacks beyond human comprehension left him speechless. Then, remembering his role, he decided to help. In a blink, he was beside Gao Li and gently pushed the man's elbow. Gao Li's spear of destiny flashed forward and pierced the Kryptonian in front of them as if it were tofu. There was no resistance, as though armor and flesh were paper. The spear was long enough to impale the next Kryptonian behind as well. Barry looked away, pained by what he'd witnessed. Mercy was absolute to him. He hated killing, whether human or alien, but technically Gao Li had been the one to drive the spear. Barry had merely assisted. That eased his conscience a little. He remembered Gao Li's earlier instruction, too. Reaching for the spear, he pulled out the shining memory and slotted it into the spear's memory port. "Glitter, maximum drive," he called. The spear erupted in blinding light. Barry moved Gao Li's body and swung. The dazzling arc swept through the lead attackers, destroying 8 Kryptonians in a single stroke. Normally, their physical strength would have resisted kinetic force, but the shining memory's maximum drive delivered tremendous destructive power. Those 8 were cut clean in 2, armor and body alike, sending bloody torsos flying. Fiora's face drained of color. Her heart sank. This was beyond anything she'd expected. These Earthlings, this one in particular, were not just strong. They were lethal. 11 of her people lay dead in that brief, brutal contact. With their small force, that loss was catastrophic. "Retreat! Scatter and run!" Fiora ordered, each word bitter and humiliating. They had outnumbered their opponent, but were now forced to flee to save their lives. To avoid capture by the red-clad boy and his companion, they split up, even abandoning a few more to ensure the rest escaped. The Kryptonians dispersed with terrifying speed. Barry could have caught any one of them, but not all of them, as they scattered in different directions. He skidded back into normal time and looked at Gao Li. "What do we do, Mr. Wayne? They're splitting up." Gao Li shook his head, almost amused. He hadn't been even close to using his full strength, and yet they fled. "Don't worry, chase as many as you can with me for now," he said. "The others should lie low for a while. If they cause trouble later and I find out, the price will be their lives." Kryptonians could move near light speed, but they couldn't outmatch Gao Li's spatial mobility when he used the Bifrost Bridge. Constantly in motion, they were safe. Stop to fight, and Gao Li would catch them and eliminate them. Barry nodded and helped chase down another fleeing Kryptonian, and Gao Li dispatched him with a single fatal thrust. Gao Li planned to return home soon. He'd send Barry back to Central City first, then head to Fadian Group to start the next phase of research. He understood the limitations of relying on Barry. This had been Barry's first real battle, and their speed differential made communication awkward. Gao Li needed tools to neutralize the Kryptonians' advantage. If he couldn't simply outrun them, he would make them slow down. He'd already put plans in motion. After his initial visit to Clark, he'd ordered Fadian Group to collect kryptonite from Smallville. With kryptonite weapons and radiation fields, any Kryptonian approaching within a certain range would be weakened. Fighting them, even with their superior speed and strength, would become far easier, whether using the shining memory or the endless golden yinglong. While Gao Li prepared equipment, the military tried to capitalize on the retreat. They scrambled forces to intercept the fleeing aliens, hoping to capture one for study and finally get some answers. They had seen the Kryptonians beaten so badly by Gao Li that, emboldened, they imagined the aliens might be fragile beneath the surface. Reality was harsher. Even a Kryptonian badly mauled by Gao Li could tear through modern military formations with sheer speed if given room. The army's attacks did little. The fleeing aliens' motion alone shredded defenses. At the same time, Zod, who had been tangled with Clark during the battle, received Fiora's message, punched Clark away, and flew off to regroup with his subordinates. Zod had learned to fly and to use heat vision after a single battle with Clark, largely because Clark had refused to kill, giving Zod the time to adapt. Clark, meanwhile, was tormented by his own mercy. He flew back to the Kent farm, heart heavy with conflict. "What am I doing?" he asked himself. "They're my people, but they attacked Earth." Zod reached the rendezvous and found many of their comrades recovering from the coma they'd suffered on arrival. Sunlight had healed them rapidly. They had not been unconscious for long. Zod scolded them for their lack of morale. Fiora explained the losses: 11 dead out of a force of just 40-some. In a 1,000-strong army, that would be negligible, but here it was a quarter of their strength. 11 died? Zod's face went dark. Are the Earthlings really that strong? They described the 2 Earthlings who had turned the tide of that encounter. "One of them is faster than us," Fiora reported, "and the other, though slow, has nearly invincible defensive and offensive power. We could not harm him at all. His attacks cut through our armor and pierced our flesh." Zod's expression tightened. This was bigger than he'd anticipated. The problem had just gotten a lot more complicated. Section 151, speed, strength, defense. They had been utterly outclassed in all 3 fundamental elements of combat. Outrageous. "Can you think of any way to break through it?" someone asked. "No matter how we attack, it won't break. There can't be matter this hard in the universe, right? What about kinetic energy buffering? It can't possibly absorb all of it, can it?" Fiora shook her head. "I don't know. Precisely because we don't understand its principle, we have no method to break through it. We can only temporarily blunt its full force." "Commander, what should we do next?" a Kryptonian asked, and Zod's brow tightened. "Right, what next?" If they exposed themselves rashly, the 2 enemies Fiora had mentioned would surely be drawn out. Even Zod, who considered himself the strongest, was not confident he could defeat them after hearing Fiora's description. In their original calculations, Kryptonians should have dominated Earth in both technology and strength. Why was this happening? A scientist suggested, "Commander, we can modify the ship Kal-El used to send his signal. That way we can restore our ability to terraform Earth's environment. Then we recover the Codex and resume the original plan," another said. "What do you think?" Fiora's voice was cold. "Kal-El is manageable. Send 2 or 3 to hold him off. But what about those 2 enemies? Who can stop them?" Zod pondered, a ruthless expression settling over his face. "Are you afraid of death? Are you not willing to sacrifice yourselves for the future of Krypton?" At once, every face grew solemn. They answered in unison, "No, Commander. We are willing to sacrifice our lives for the future of Krypton." The morale Gowley had shattered earlier flared back up. This was the power of leadership and charisma. Zod had it. He nodded slowly. "Very good. I salute you. Then I have a plan. At a critical moment, we will disperse across the world and devastate human cities and habitats. That will force the enemy to rush to every corner of the planet to stop us, and in doing so, they'll give us an opening." It was a brutal plan that would cost many Kryptonians their lives, but it had the highest probability of success. They would use themselves as a buffer against the invincible duo. Shortly after, they located the Kryptonian spaceship. To buy time for the modifications, the Kryptonians dispersed across the globe at near light speed. Under the training of Fiora and Zod, they rapidly mastered flight and heat vision and adapted to Earth's environment. They were stronger than before, now nearly as powerful as true Kryptonians. Overnight Kryptonians appeared in major cities, turning them into infernos. Washington, D.C. fell first. They entered the city as if it were their own home, eyes searching like hunters. Skyscrapers collapsed like the corpses of giants, explosions painting the sky. In Paris, heat vision reduced the Eiffel Tower to twisted iron vine. Chaos replaced the city's elegance. London's sky filled with smoke, shattered glass and debris littered the streets, and cars lay crashed in piles. Tokyo echoed with deafening explosions and the roar of collapsing towers. Electricity and water systems were cut. plunging the city into darkness and panic. In Berlin, historic buildings were swept away like kindling, music and culture silenced. Seoul's skyscrapers were sliced into blocks by heat vision, the city a blazing ruin. Rome's ancient landmarks crumbled before emotionless beams of light, as if civilization itself were being erased. Financial districts everywhere were torn down as if they were nothing more than toys. The greatest cities on Earth were turned to rubble, and the Kryptonians' destruction seemed unstoppable. Breaking news flashed across screens in Central City. Barry watched in shock and rage when a rainbow pillar of light descended beside him. "Mr. Wayne, you," he began, but a hand reached out from the pillar and dragged him in. "No more small talk. Come with me." The Bifrost Bridge teleported them to Metropolis. When the light faded, a large screen displayed a list of disaster coordinates. "Have you memorized them all?" asked Gao Li. With Barry's speed, a second could be stretched into countless instants. He engraved the coordinates in his mind. "Yes, I've memorized them all." "Good, then do as before. The timeline has regained some elasticity over the past few days. Run, Barry, run!" Barry, now practiced at this, sprinted and reversed time. The damage to the major cities repaired itself under the influence of his speed. He could not reverse far enough to undo the Kryptonians' initial attacks entirely, but he saved countless lives. The endpoint for the reversal was still set at Gao Li's side. After surviving crises together, Barry and Clark had developed a quiet, instinctive trust in Gao Li. Whatever he decided to do, they felt could be handled. "Coordinates, input them into the computer," Gao Li ordered. Barry entered the coordinates quickly. Gao Li's fingers hovered, and then he pressed enter. "Making big news again and again, huh? This time, I'm going to wipe you all out." Kryptonite weapons had been prepared quickly during the waiting period. They were simple devices, and many components were already scattered in Smallville, so production and transport were fast. Loading them onto the Zia satellite was trivial with the Magic Circle connection. The satellite could project the 01 armor anywhere and had the best global deployment capability. In an instant, dozens of pillars of light extended from the Zia satellite and dropped into the vicinity of the Kryptonians, wreaking havoc. Gao Li had, before the time reversal, recorded the exact coordinates the Zia satellite had observed, timing the strike precisely based on how far Barry could safely reverse time without risking a flashpoint. The Kryptonians, caught in their destruction, froze at the sight of the falling objects. Each was a long, dark green sword, stone-like in appearance. At first they felt nothing. The shafts were protected by transparent casings, but when the casings opened, the kryptonite within radiated fiercely. The Kryptonians were hit by an overwhelming weakness. "What's happening?" They cried, alarm spreading. This was not merely the slight restriction they felt adapting to Earth, it was total debilitation. They felt sapped, as if stricken by a mortal illness. Muscles went slack. Movement became almost impossible. It was more unbearable than any previous adaptation pains. Behind them, a golden linking magic circle appeared, and Gao Li's voice was cold, indifferent. "Die." This moment was the best opportunity to capture them, but Gao Li would not risk leaving them alive. Repeatedly capturing dangerous criminals only to have them escape again and wreak havoc was a pattern he did not want to perpetuate. Even with Barry's time reversals, the slaughter they had just caused could never be atoned for. He would end it now. Transforming into his glitter form, Gao Li thrust his spear, the Spear of Destiny, through each Kryptonian's armor, crushing hearts with brutal efficiency. He hauled each corpse into the linking magic circle so they could be destroyed and disposed of centrally, eliminating any chance of future trouble. From Barry's vantage point, it was a blur. Gao Li teleporting from city to city, slaying the weakened Kryptonians with single decisive blows. The armor's hardness did not change with their body's weakness, so strikes that could guarantee a kill were essential. The spear cut through defenses without risk of leaving a foe flying out of range and recovering. In short order, the dispersed Kryptonians were dead, their bodies forming a small mound. Gao Li scanned the piles. Zod and the commander I fought aren't here. Where did they go? He checked each body but could not find those two faces. Zod had broadcast globally, the voice left an impression, and Fiora had been the commander who had fought Gao Li and Barry directly. If their bodies were missing, some had escaped. Then Gowley's emergency line rang. On the other end came a rushing, frantic voice and the sound of movement, then a boom before the call dropped. "Mr. Wayne, zzz, Fortress of Solitude, zzz." Boom. Clark's voice had cut off mid-sentence. Gowley immediately deduced the likely situation. Zod and company had headed for the Fortress of Solitude. The ship's defenses would have alerted Kal-El. Jor-El's artificial intelligence inside couldn't be overrun without sending a warning. Clark most likely tried to get there immediately and may have called in the brief window while he was still within range. Kryptonians possessed extraordinary vision and hearing. Clark might not have even gotten far before being spotted and engaged. They would send people to hunt him down. The call had been Clark's last attempt to contact Gowley before being cut off. "Barry, come with me," Gowley said. "Huh?" Barry started. "Why don't you project more kryptonite like before?" Gowley explained. "It's useless. If I project kryptonite from Zia again, they'll shoot it down mid-air. I've already killed so many of their people. Zod and Fiora will be watching the sky. They won't let anything like that approach them. If I want kryptonite to work, I have to bring it myself." While he spoke, Gowley used the linking magic circle to collect the scattered kryptonite swords back to Fadian group. "Let's go." He snapped his fingers. The Bifrost Bridge pillar enveloped him and Barry, and they vanished. Antarctica, the Fortress of Solitude. 5 Kryptonians were ganging up on Clark, raining blows down on him until he barely stayed upright. He had gone back to the fortress because he couldn't shake the worry about Zod and his group. Besides Zod and Fiora, 3 Kryptonian scientists who had helped modify the fortress had joined the assault when Zod called them over. They feared that if this kid really went berserk, he could burn the Kryptonian ship to pieces with his heat vision, so they decided to strike first and concentrate their efforts to kill him. It was an effective tactic. Alone, Zod could push Clark to a draw. Clark was still, in Zod's eyes, a farm boy next to a lifetime's worth of battle experience. With Fiora and 3 additional Kryptonians, even if the scientists lacked combat genes, their basic Kryptonian speed and strength made them far more dangerous. Clark took a brutal beating. Bruises bloomed, bones cracked, and he spat blood. A heavy blow sent him smashing through ice. Fiora pursued like a cold wind, slippery, probing for weaknesses. Clark didn't stop. He drove through the shattered glacier, dodging energy discharges and countering where he could. A powerful punch connected with Fiora's face and knocked her back. Bang! Fists flew, shadows danced. Each collision rang across the ice like thunder. Zod's strikes were fast and brutal, his frame a mountain of muscle, his fists iron and stone, meant to pin Clark and open him to others. Fiora, lithe and quick, weaved in for surprise attacks. The scientists provided the restraint and ranged support, using devices to generate magnetic and energy fields that hampered Clark's movement. Their blows were precise, their attacks left him little room to retaliate. Blood trailed down the ice in a dark ribbon. Clark's limbs were battered, fingers and toes misaligned, ribs cracking with a sickening sound. One of Zod's blows snapped a rib cleanly. The Kryptonians saw their chance. "Good opportunity," one of them barked. "Kill him," another shouted, and their heat vision converged on Clark in a column of white-hot light. The glacier hissed where the beams licked at the ice. Even then, Clark refused to yield. As the only naturally born Kryptonian among them, his potential still surged. He used his steel body to withstand the heat and his stubborn will to stave off the pain. His suit was stained with blood, his face a map of bruises and dried gore. Nose broken, jaw split, but his eyes still burned with resolve. How was he not falling? Fiora and Zod exchanged astonished looks. Clark's demeanor, though barely human now, held steady. He kept thinking of one thing. Mr. Wayne. "I must hold on, just until Mr. Wayne gets here," he muttered through cracked lips, and that hope steadied him beyond what his battered body should have allowed. The Kryptonians intensified their assault, hammering him until he could no longer rise. Clark collapsed on the ice, pale and bleeding, yet his gaze remained unbowed. Zod sneered, thinking Clark close to death. In their minds, the fight had lasted mere seconds. Kryptonian speed made every instant stretch. Then, a streak of radiant color cleaved the Antarctic sky like salvation, the Bifrost Bridge. A column of light arcs down, and when it faded, Gowley stood between Clark and the attackers, separating the combatants and creating a sliver of space. Clark seized it, using the last of his strength to fly away, escaping the encirclement. "Mr. Wayne," he croaked, voice shredded. Gowley nodded once, approval in his eyes. "Clark, you did very well. You held on." He turned to Clark with a quiet command. "Go, fly into space and soak up sunlight. Get healed." "But there," Clark began, still breathless. "They're so strong, and there are so many." Gowley waved a nonchalant hand. "Leave the rest to me. They're chickens and dogs to be slaughtered." Unknown to Clark in that moment, Gowley, assisted by Barry, had already taken 11 Kryptonians out of the fight. He'd kept that from Clark. No point in showing off the slaughter of Clark's kin when the boy was delirious and bleeding. Clark, entangled with Zod, had no time to watch Gowley's skirmish, and assumed only that he should trust Mr. Wayne's plan. Zod's face darkened when Clark prepared to fly off. For this primitive son of a backward planet to dare look down on Kryptonians was an affront. Still, Zod remembered a report from Fiora about the longswords the masked man had used, and he kept himself restrained. The longer-range tactic they decided on was sensible: keep distance and exploit those swords' radiation, which the scientists suspected was kryptonite-based and extremely penetrating. A longsword-sized piece of kryptonite could overwhelm even a fully armored Kryptonian. Their suits only provided partial protection, and the radiation's effect scaled with mass. So Zod and the others put distance between themselves and Gowley, but Gowley hardly bothered to hide his contempt. They were making themselves both predictable and, in his estimation, foolish. Gowley let them move and then raised his hand. "Connect," he said under his breath, and the air answered. Magic circles burst into being around Zod, Fiora, and the other Kryptonians. From each circle, several kryptonite longswords rose, mounted on electromagnetic levitation platforms. The swords extended on silent rails towards their targets. "What?" Zod and Fiora's pupils constricted. Even through their enhanced armor, they felt an immediate weakening, as if their strength were being leached away. The hastily improved radiation shielding bought them only a fraction of their former resistance. When Gowley had first killed Kryptonians, he'd used satellite projection to sneak swords in from behind, ensuring efficiency. Now, chaining connection magic circles to follow them, he filled the air around each Kryptonian with levitating blades. The scientists, weakened by the radiation and lacking battle genes, had no chance. The Spear of Destiny's arc tore through them. 3 of them were cut cleanly in half. "No," Fiora cried. The memory of a former nightmare flashed across her features. Zod and Fiora's warrior genes were stronger. They managed to leap free at the last second, but fury consumed Zod. "Shameless sneak attacker," Gowley shrugged. "There's no need for chivalry against people like you." Both sides bristled, the tension instant. Zod considered Gowley perhaps the strongest opponent he'd faced. They surged like a storm. Zod charged first, a black meteor aimed at Gowley's chest. Fiora flashed low and hard, a blade of shadow aiming for Gowley's flank. Gowley's lips curved into a small smile. He made no defense. He allowed Zod's fist to strike his armor. Boom! The shockwave fanned out like an earthquake tearing through Antarctica, yet Gowley, at the epicenter, didn't budge. Fiora's attack, arriving the same instant, slammed into him and bounced off harmlessly. Zod's heart skipped a beat, despite having expected something like this. He had underestimated how much worse it would feel in person. "My turn," Gowley sneered. The Spear of Destiny materialized in his hand. He swung it as if it were a god-sent weapon. The spearhead, pulsing with energy, darted straight for Zod. A flash of caution crossed Zod's face as he tried to evade, but the spear followed like a shadow. It pierced his armor and ripped out a spray of blood. "Gah!" Zod ground his teeth, tasting iron. He staggered, managed to shift his body, and tried to counterattack. Before he could land a blow, the Spear of Destiny flashed again, lightning and thunder in a strike, and cracked across his face. The impact sent him flying, a scorched trail burning through the air. "Bastard!" Fiora leapt like an eagle and launched herself at Gowley. Her fists were iron and stone, meant to crush. But when they met Gowley's bioarmor, the sound was only metal on metal. Gowley stood as immovable as bedrock. The realization that her strength did nothing hit Fiora like a blade. This same helplessness, that same despair, it was exactly as it had been before. Her lips trembled. Gowley didn't waste a second. He swung the Spear of Destiny into her, then began to rain blows down in a merciless storm. Fiora tumbled through the air and hit the cold ice hard. Pain exploded through her back like broken bones. She tried to rise, but her body would not obey. The once formidable Kryptonian leader lay vulnerable and defeated before Gao Li. "Do you know why I didn't kill you both outright when I had the chance?" Gao Li said as he walked among them. His voice was calm. "The reason is simple. I don't take pleasure in torture, so I killed ordinary Kryptonians quickly. But you two are different. You led the Kryptonians to do this to Earth. You are the ones responsible. I want you to feel what Earthlings feel." Gao Li raised the spear. His aura cut the air like a storm. He drove it toward Zod again. Zod clawed himself to his feet. The cold tightened around them as if the world had paused. Gao Li thrust mercilessly, aiming for limb and joint. At the same moment, Fiora tried to strike from behind, darting across the ice like wind with a handblade meant to slice anything. It bit into Gao Li's armor like striking basalt. "It's still like this. Damn it," Fiora spat. Earlier, when they'd discussed his defense, Zod had wondered whether it had a durability limit or a time constraint. Now neither weakness revealed itself. Fiora abandoned probes and instead blew across the ice, throwing a rising mist up to obscure vision. Zod used that breath of concealment to flee. "You dare offend the abbot and run." Gao Li reacted instantly. He chased after Fiora with the Spear of Destiny, and with a thunderous crack sent her skidding dozens of meters. The spear struck her chest and punched a burning pain through her ribs. Gao Li kept advancing on both of them, steps steady as a mountain. Ice didn't slow him. "Watch out! He's coming!" Zod shouted, warning Fiora. Gao Li charged straight at them, unconcerned by any counterstrike. Their attacks had no effect. Each time the Spear of Destiny hit, it felt like being smashed by a hammer from a god. Bodies were hurled across the ice, rebounding, crashing. Zod felt his bones crushed beneath a relentless weight. Fiora's flesh convulsed under impacts that left her nearly motionless. The pair could only lie there and take it, each blow twisting them in deeper agony, until Gao Li finally stopped, but only when they were almost unrecognizable. "This beating is for humanity," Gao Li said, "and for Clark, who you beat so badly earlier." He walked up to them, raised the spear to deliver the final stroke. Zod rasped, "I fight only for my people. I have no regrets about dying." They were spent, no strength to resist. Barry, who had watched the whole fight, spoke up hesitantly. "Mr. Wayne, there? Maybe." Gao Li cut him off with a shake of his head. "Barry, think back to what you saw before time was reversed. Then reconsider what you're about to say." Barry fell silent. Whatever he'd witnessed in that rewind had been worse than anything Gao Li had to explain, likely a vision of hell on Earth. Gao Li's face softened only a fraction. "Still," Gao Li said, "from a Kryptonian perspective, fighting for your race isn't a great sin, but I will send you off properly." He slipped the shining memory into the spear and intoned, "Glitter, maximum drive." A furnace of light erupted as Gao Li thrust downward. The Spear of Destiny consumed Zod and Fiora. Body and consciousness vaporized in searing pain until there was nothing left. The invasion ended in the blaze of that final strike. The battle was over, but the aftermath would become a different kind of trouble. The government moved in almost immediately, searching for answers. They found the kryptonite longsword deployed by the Zia satellite, but when they turned to Fadian Group for leads, Fadian and Wayne Group acted in concert, and suddenly the military had no leverage over Gao Li. Fang's bioarmor technology, exposed by the fight, made the military even more eager to get their hands on him. Gao Li's identity in Gotham had been well guarded. Even Batman hadn't pieced it together, let alone the military. With Fang untraceable, there was nothing they could do. Gao Li used the lull to ferry the Kryptonian corpses to the edge of the universe and destroy them with the shining memory and the Spear of Destiny, trying to eliminate any trace that could cause future problems. But he hadn't finished the cleanup. In that gap, opportunists moved. Lex Luthor, already bitter after Zod's rhetoric, never missed an opportunity. Though Gao Li had never regarded Lex as a true rival, he disliked Lex's character more than doubted his intellect. Lex was dangerous in his own way. He had the uncanny ability to copy and replicate Fadian Group's inventions faster than anyone expected. Even without foresight, Lex reacted quickly to the remnant biological materials left at the site. Through careful work, he reverse-engineered the microscopic tissue. Superman, Lex said with a cold snort, looking at the slides under his microscope. Once Superman appeared in Metropolis, Lex's hatred had accelerating growth, to the point that Superman would soon rival Gao Li as his principal target. Discovering Kryptonian biology gave him a new toy, a potential headline and leverage. Lex, self-styled the smartest man in the world, already had plans to exploit every shard of Kryptonian relics to his advantage. Gao Li barely noticed, too occupied pushing forward his own projects. He'd never much liked schmoozing with those he considered morally bankrupt. He was a relentless engineer of progress, an unyielding machine of research priorities. Gotham, Wayne Manor. Sunlight poured over the manicured gardens. Xiao Guang skipped across the lawn in a loose robe. His white hair fluttered and a wolf tail wagged behind him. He grinned and tapped Dick on the shoulder, then darted away, laughing. "Heh, Dick, come chase me," Xiao Guang taunted, rolling on the grass. Dick sprang up after him, breathless, and the two collided in a tangle of laughter. Alfred set his teacup down and watched them with a fond, almost indulgent smile. "These two are full of energy," he said to himself. The sound of children's laughter in the manor eased a loneliness Alfred hadn't noticed he was carrying. It reminded him tenderly of Bruce's early years. After a while, Dick, sweating and out of breath, plopped down on the grass. "Xiao Guang, can you run slower? I can't catch you." He'd grown up confident in his stamina from the circus, but today Xiao Guang's nimble, husky-like energy was too much to match. Then rest a bit. Want to play something calmer later?" Xiao Guang suggested, eyes bright. "I want to play hide-and-seek," Dick said. If he couldn't outlast Xiao Guang, he could outsmart him. Xiao Guang clapped his hands. "Okay, Alfred, be the referee." "Of course," Alfred replied with a doting smile. "It would be my pleasure." They began weaving through the manor, past priceless furniture, rare artifacts, and shelves of books. Xiao Guang hid like a ghost behind curtains and slipped behind bookshelves as if the house itself were part of the game. The afternoon warmed with their shouts and quiet giggles, the manor alive again for the first time in a long while. Section 154. When the game of hide-and-seek finally ended, Dick was out of breath again. How could even a simple game be so exhausting? "Dick, you lost," Light Wayne crowed triumphantly. "That's because you know the manor better than I do." Dick shot back immediately. You're just being stubborn." "No, I'm not. I'm telling the truth." Just then Alfred came into the room. Seeing the two kids sprawled on the floor, a fond smile softened his face. "Light, Dick, are you tired from playing? Would you like some afternoon tea?" Both boys answered at once, "Yes." Alfred's tea was a marvel, a spread of pastries and drinks so tempting it made their mouths water. Only Alfred could referee a game and then produce a full afternoon tea. He truly was a super butler. Light Wayne devoured the pastries, while Dick used a knife and fork with proper manners. They ate and chatted, their laughter ringing through the room. After they'd finished, Dick suddenly remembered something. "Light, do you know where Bruce, father, has been? I haven't seen him in days." Dick still found Bruce's habits strange. Though Bruce could be seen leaving the house in the daytime, at night he almost never seemed to be around. Lately he had even been missing during the day. Light Wayne opened his mouth to answer a certain way. "Uncle Bruce has been really busy lately. He's been out fighting crime, so he must be catching up on sleep during the day," but he stopped himself. He knew that Bruce had responsibilities that required secrecy, and it seemed Dick didn't know about them yet. Light's wolf ears flattened slightly, and he looked guiltily at the floor. I don't know," he said. "All right," Dick said, nodding thoughtfully. He had noticed something odd in his time with Light. Whenever Light tried to hide the truth, his ears would instinctively flatten back like a scared animal's. A secretive family indeed. After a pause, Dick brightened with an idea, and Light agreed without hesitation. "Let's go on a grand adventure." "Yay!" They decided to explore Wayne Manor thoroughly, including some underground rooms that hadn't been used in years. Dick had other motives as well. Everyone in the Wayne household except Alfred seemed mysterious. Light Wayne, of course, was unique. Dick had never met anyone who wasn't fully human. Bruce's comings and goings were inexplicable. Uncle Gao Li was even more puzzling, harder to track down than Bruce, often nowhere to be found. As for Alfred, the man's competence seemed almost superhuman. Dick's curiosity, the kind that belonged to a born detective, was inflamed. They ran around until they found a hidden passage. "Light, do you know what's in here?" Dick asked, shining a flashlight down the dark corridor. "No, I've never been down here either," Light replied, tail twitching with curiosity. "Let's go explore together. We might find something interesting." They wandered down the passage and came upon a heavy iron door fitted with a combination lock. "Wow, what's this?" Dick said, stepping up to it and examining the lock. Light poked a finger at the dial. "Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm going to see if I can crack this lock," Dick said. Light's claws flashed as he reached toward it, which made Dick jump. "Don't! You can't scratch at it. What if it sets off something dangerous?" Dick worried about traps. He'd seen enough mystery shows to know hidden places often had defenses. Okay, I'll just try the code," he said and stepped back. He tried a few combinations, but the lock wouldn't yield. He frowned, thinking. "Light, any idea what the code might be?" Light shook his head. "I don't really understand these things." "Ugh, fine, let's go. There's nothing fun here," Dick said, disheartened, and turned to leave. "Wait, I thought of something." Light's face lit up. "See, the lock has 4 digits. We can try all 4-digit numbers." Dick stared. "What kind of plan is that? Do you know how many combinations that is? How long would that take?" Light waved a paw. "It won't be that long. I'm sure there are only a few likely codes." Dick was skeptical, but Light explained further. He'd been to the Batcave with Gao Li and had watched Bruce enter codes before. Being quick to learn, Light had nearly memorized what he'd seen. If this lock was Bruce's doing, the code might follow the same pattern. "You know this?" Dick asked, surprised. Light's ears twitched. He almost blurted the truth about Bruce's secret identity, then coughed and covered. I was just guessing. It won't hurt to try." "Okay, you try." Light punched in several guesses at random, but nothing worked. He wiped at his brow. "Guess I was wrong." Dick watched Light's ears again, flattened, then drooping, and his detective instincts sharpened. There had to be something secret in this house. Over the next few days, he peppered Light with questions, careful not to seem too obvious. "So, Light, why do you look different from the rest of us? I've never seen a wolf like you." Light puffed up proudly. "Humph, I'm pretty impressive, aren't I? One of a kind." Dick blinked. "No, I mean, how can you change into this near-human form? Are you a werewolf? Some kind of monster or spirit?" "I don't know," Light answered honestly. "I just felt I could change, so I did." Dick studied Light's ears. "Do you remember how you came into this world? Who your real parents are?" Light looked puzzled. "What do you mean? Haven't you met them?" "My dad is Uncle Gao Li." Dick hesitated. "Okay then, who's your mom?" Light replied simply, "My mom is him too." Dick gaped. He steered the conversation away when the answer, strange and alarming, made his head spin. He had the unsettling feeling that pushing too hard about Gao Li might bring trouble. He moved on to something less explosive. "Why do you always wear a robe?" Light shrugged. "Other clothes are tight and don't work when I change. A robe's easy to put on and take off when I shift between wolf and human." Dick nodded slowly. That explained a lot. Light didn't carry his clothes when he transformed, which was different from the transformations he'd seen in books and on TV. Dick only knew that Xiaoguang could transform. He'd never actually seen it happen. "What does it feel like to turn into a wolf?" he asked, curious. "Is it any different from being human?" Xiaoguang tilted his head and thought a moment. "It's a little inconvenient to hold things. I have to walk on all fours, so I carry things in my mouth. Everything else, like my smell and hearing, is about the same. And I'm covered in fur, which is actually warmer than wearing clothes. Putting on a jacket would feel awkward and uncomfortable." Dick nodded. "I can see that. I still remember the first day I got here. You smelled that I'd eaten McDonald's." "Yeah." Xiaoguang pointed at him. "I can smell a lot of things. For example, you didn't use shampoo yesterday to be lazy, did you?" Dick's face went beet red. This sense of smell felt like cheating. It was as if Xiaoguang could see straight through him. He swallowed his embarrassment and steered the conversation back. "Let's not get sidetracked. What about your father? Uncle Gao Li? What does he do? Why don't I see him around Wayne Manor much?" Xiaoguang sighed. "Father spends most of his time in Metropolis on business. He's always leaving me at home." Watching Xiaoguang slump, Dick felt a pang of sympathy for the boy who resembled a small pet, abandoned by its master. It's okay. I'll stay with you. You also have school, Xiaoguang pointed out. You're not home during the day on weekdays. That's true. Dick decided not to press the odd question of why Xiaoguang didn't go to school. Instead, he peppered him with other questions. Why don't you ever wear shoes? Xiaoguang considered it and smiled. I don't like them. I like running barefoot. Shoes are a hassle. I'm too lazy to wear them. Dick was surprised. He hadn't expected someone from the Wayne family to prefer going barefoot. Then he remembered his own childhood trips to the countryside, how running barefoot in the fields felt like freedom. Bare feet are the most comfortable. You can feel the warmth of the ground, like running through the forest. And my claws help me catch bad guys. They're my natural weapons. Don't your feet hurt without protection? Dick asked. No, I'm used to it. Xiaoguang stretched out on the grass. Besides, the lawn is soft, like stepping on cotton. What about winter? Don't you catch colds? Xiaoguang scratched his head and blinked his golden bestial eyes. No, I'm very strong. You've never heard of a wolf catching a cold in winter, have you? Dick thought of documentaries showing wolves thriving in icy places. He figured he needn't worry too much. Then, suddenly, he asked, Aren't you curious what Father does at night? Why don't we follow him? The question startled Xiaoguang. He answered too quickly. No, I'm not curious. Anyway, I'm just not curious. But Dick kept pushing. That's strange. You're usually so curious. Are you hiding something? Do you know something? Xiaoguang shrank away from the questioning, his eyes flicking around for Alfred. A moment later, a shadow loomed behind them, and a hand landed on Dick's shoulder. Dick, I need your cousin for a bit. You don't mind, do you? Dick spun around and saw Uncle Gao Li. No, I don't mind. Gao Li nodded and waved at Xiaoguang. Xiaoguang dashed over and clung to him like a koala. Father, do you need me for something? There's an experimental project that needs your cooperation, Gao Li said. Gao Li wasn't simply rescuing him from interrogation. He'd also remembered a new experiment he wanted to try now that he was back at Wayne Manor. He wanted to see whether he could take Xiaoguang into the Marvel Universe. His reasoning was simple. Xiaoguang was essentially a life form formed from primal divine energy, and Gao Li had bonded with and marked him. If Xiaoguang could learn to convert himself into an energy state, or separate a large portion of his own energy so Gao Li could absorb it into his soul, maybe Gao Li could carry that soul out of the DC universe and into the Marvel universe. It was the same method he used to transfer magic. Both were forms of energy. And because the giant ferocious beast, part of Xiaoguang's origin, had devised that method, compatibility should be even better. In short, I want you to learn some skills. Specifically, Gao Li began as he walked away with Xiaoguang, explaining patiently. Xiaoguang's face fell. Why did he still have to study? He didn't want to go to school. Clark had just begun to recover from the emotional fallout of the Kryptonian invasion. He understood Gao Li's actions. The Kryptonian incursion had brought heavy casualties, and something had to be done. Clark even felt gratitude that Gao Li hadn't forced his hand and made him kill his own compatriots. Clark couldn't imagine having to choose between the lives of Kryptonians and humans. Another reason Clark bounced back more quickly was that love had eased his grief. He'd fallen for Lois Lane, as if destiny had decreed it. In almost any universe, Superman found himself in love with Lois. This one was no exception. One day, Clark received a message from Gao Li. Clark went to the Fadian Group headquarters at Gao Li's invitation and was led down to the laboratory. Clark, I have an experimental project that needs your help. Will you cooperate? Gao Li asked plainly. Clark puffed out his chest. Of course, Mr. Wayne. You've helped me so much already. Gao Li smiled. That's good. Actually, you won't need to do much. I suspect a particular concept can be extracted from you. After the invasion, Gao Li had studied Clark's potential. No matter the world, Superman often represented a kind of limit. He wasn't divine, yet his speed and strength could rival some of the highest beings. That suggested Clark embodied, or could trigger, something that pushed against the universe's upper bounds. Barry Allen, for example, could be faster because he's linked to the Speed Force, a primal origin of creation that lets him surpass the world's normal limits. Any being stronger than Superman is basically an existence the universe can't easily constrain. or that has the potential to break through the universe's limits, Gao Li said as he led Clark deeper into a more secure part of the lab. But Superman himself can exceed limits, usually only during extreme emotional surges. In normal states, if we set a material universe's upper limit, you're the most standard benchmark. I want to try to extract the concept of ultimate from you. Clark only half understood, but he trusted Gao Li. Okay, Mr. Wayne, I'll do whatever you need. Part of that trust came from seeing Gao Li defeat Kryptonians with ease. If Gao Li wanted to harm Clark, he could have done so already. Clark knew he couldn't win against Gao Li. Inside the lab, Clark noticed a boy with beast ears and a tail sleeping on a table. Mr. Wayne, this is... Oh, this is my son, Light, Gao Li said casually. He gets sleepy after a little learning, so I let him nap. The casual remark made Clark's eyes widen. Wait, Mr. Wayne's son? Clark's supervision also told him Xiao Guang's body wasn't exactly human. Gao Li continued, By the way, I haven't told you yet, but you should know this. During the Holy Sun's advent, didn't you fight the angel from heaven? Xiao Guang is the current Holy Sun. Clark stared at Xiao Guang, who was drooling in his sleep, bewildered. The advent he'd participated in had failed. Wasn't the Holy Sun supposed to be different? Gao Li explained, It only failed in the ritual you were part of. It succeeded here. The Holy Sun doesn't have to be born in heaven. As Clark watched, Gao Li used a test tube to collect Xiao Guang's drool, scraping the corner of his mouth so not a drop was wasted. Don't let his foolish appearance fool you, Gao Li said. His saliva has healing properties. It's a precious medical sample. Medicine developed from it could benefit all humanity. Clark's face twisted. The idea of medicine made from drool made him uncomfortable. All right, Mr. Wayne, he said quickly. We shouldn't wake him. Gao Li laughed. He sleeps deeply. Unless you put something tasty under his nose, you probably can't wake him. Then he led Clark through another door. Come this way. I'll run some tests on you. In the next room, another young man was waiting. You two met during the battle against the Kryptonian invasion, right? This is Barry Allen. He's planning to debut as the Flash. Clark held out his hand, and Barry shook it eagerly. I know who you are, the famous Superman. Barry pulled out a pen and paper. Can you sign this for me? Clark obliged, a little shy. Barry whipped out his phone. Can we take a photo too? If it's printed, please sign the back and write to my dear Barry Allen. All right, Gao Li intervened, gently separating the overexcited Barry. You'll see each other often. There'll be plenty of chances. He wasn't exaggerating. Barry Allen had accepted Gao Li's well-paid invitation to take part in his research, essentially to be studied. Speed Force is an astonishing power, and Gao Li couldn't get enough of it. He was already wondering whether he could use the Speed Force to push the Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto's speed even higher. Although Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto could also travel to the past, that was through harnessing tachyon flows, not by achieving superluminal speed to reverse time like Barry. In ordinary combat, Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto still hadn't reached light speed, so there was room for improvement. Meanwhile, Gao Li's research in the Marvel Universe was close to a breakthrough. He was on the verge of developing the Beyond Zector. The plan was to finish it on his next trip to the Marvel Universe and send it back for his past self to use, closing the temporal loop. While Gao Li studied Kryptonians, Lex Luthor was doing the same. Inside a lead-lined laboratory, Lex worked machines with cold eyes. Humanity doesn't need gods, least of all those false gods. I, who can create marvels, should lead humanity forward. He looked at a cultivation tank with satisfaction. His greatest masterpiece was about to be born, something that could finally ensnare both Gao Li and the Superman he despised. After Gao Li brought Xiao Guang back to Gotham, Bruce Wayne approached him with a worried expression. Since the Kryptonians' invasion, Bruce's concern had only grown. The global attacks had heightened his urgency. He watched those beings from a distant planet, especially the one called Superman, always from humanity's standpoint, cautious and calculating. Gao Li, Bruce said, his eyes heavy with concern. I want to talk about Superman. Gao Li nodded. Bruce produced a small device and began a slideshow. Paris, London, Washington, Tokyo, Seoul. He recited each city and displayed photos of the aftermath. Dawn had receded from the sky, leaving desolation, ruined buildings and burning debris reflecting endless sorrow. Cities that had been symbols of human achievement were reduced to unprecedented ruin by the Kryptonian invasion. The scale of destruction was unmistakable. Bruce watched the images in grim silence. Gowli breathed out inwardly. If the fabric of space-time were to be broken and the world reshaped, Barry's time reversal wouldn't save everyone. Gowli, the Kryptonians are gone, but Superman remains, and in terms of strength, he is no weaker than any of them, Bruce said. His power is immense. He could destroy a city or change the fate of the planet. He is effectively a god among men. The more Bruce spoke, the grimmer he became, hands clasped tight. Gowli understood his fears. Are you worried he's a threat, that he might become another dangerous factor, like the Kryptonians? Bruce didn't reply, but his look confirmed it. He feared Superman's existence would threaten humanity. Gowli sighed softly. Everyone worries about that, but Bruce, we can't distrust him just because he's powerful. We need to understand him, his motives, his thoughts. How do we do that? Bruce asked, skeptical. How do we understand him? There's only one way. Talk to him directly. Have a conversation, Gowli suggested. Bruce hesitated. Do you have a way to contact him? Bruce knew through various sources that Fang had cooperated with Superman during the invasion, but he didn't know that Gowli was Fang. The only time Clark had come to Gotham to find Gowli, he'd moved at nearly light speed, making him impossible to track with contemporary tech. Gowli didn't intend to reveal his secret. He only nodded. Sort of. He shows up in Metropolis a lot, and my base is there too. Over time, we had our encounters. He's a friend. When it comes to protecting humanity, he and you share the same goals. Bruce's distrust hardened into a sneer. A friend? What does that mean to him? When did you get so sentimental? He sounded incredulous. He's a Kryptonian from a culture we can't understand. We can't be sure where his loyalties lie. Gowli replied calmly. As far as I know, Superman grew up on Earth. Zod mentioned that during his broadcast. If he was raised here, his culture is Earth's, and his heart could be like ours. Like ours? Bruce shook his head. We can't assume that. Our physiologies are different. Our hormones shape behavior. Who's to say Kryptonians are guided the same way? Once he decides something, it could affect the entire planet. We must be cautious. Batman's instinct was to distrust. Gowli walked to the window and looked out over the city. Bruce, I know it's hard to accept, but I believe Superman's heart is human. He has convictions and responsibilities. Bruce stared at him. That's my responsibility too. We can't trust the unknown. I won't let Earth become a plaything for aliens. Gowli's voice was steady. You've seen Fang fight the Kryptonians. You've hacked military databases, watched the battles through satellites. Fang took them down with ease. Fang can be humanity's safeguard. Even if Superman ever went rogue, Fang could stop him. Bruce was taken aback. The logic had weight. He had been tangled with Fang for a long time. They had fought together, watched each other's strengths. Gowli, I trust Fang's capability, but is it wise to put everything on one line? His voice was heavy, as if bearing the weight of the world. This is not the world you once knew. Even if you neutralize Superman, can you eliminate every metahuman? Those born different will only increase. Gowli pinched his brow. Bruce's doubts didn't vanish. He'd wanted to argue that Superman was incomparable to the other metahumans in sheer power. Yet in front of Fang, it seemed everyone might be on equal footing. No one could best Fang. If judged by power alone, Fang would be the one most likely to be targeted. After a long moment, Bruce said, I'll think it over. Though unconvinced, Bruce's insistence on dealing with Superman had loosened. The following days were calm for Gowli, but not for Clark Kent. Ever since Zod's world broadcast, the public knew Superman was a Kryptonian, not a human, and the debate never stopped. Many people believed a simple axiom: someone not of their kind must be different inside. Clark felt like an anomaly. What troubled him most recently was the incident in a Middle Eastern village called Nimi Row. The CIA, aiming to root out warlord forces there, sent Jimmy Olsen undercover as a photographer to scout the warlord's hideout. Lex Luthor intervened, sending mercenaries who pretended to assist the warlord but actually exposed Jimmy's identity. Jimmy was killed, and a war correspondent, Lois, fell into danger. Clark rushed to save her, but before he could, the mercenaries betrayed the warlord, slaughtered many of his men and innocent villagers, and burned bodies to fabricate evidence that Superman had used heat vision to indiscriminately attack civilians while rescuing Lois. Even worse, the CIA had tracked Jimmy and launched a missile at Nami Row, disregarding Lois and dozens of villagers. Clark stopped the missile, but Lex's scheme had succeeded. Even though the mercenaries had committed the atrocity and the CIA knew the truth, the CIA helped prop up the lie to cover their own bombing. The result, a story spread that Superman killed civilians. When resistance forces arrived amid sand and smoke, the scene looked like a massacre. The fabricated narrative made Superman appear tyrannical. At a Senate committee hearing, effectively a public trial, testimony was staged to depict Superman negatively. A black woman from Nimi Row tearfully described the night. There was a loud noise like the sky splitting. He came down and then fire. Later she said through sobs, "The government attacked. The village was destroyed. My parents couldn't escape." The committee's intent was to cement Superman's culpability. Senator Finch summarized the hearing. The world marvels at Superman's abilities, but no one has asked what he should do. This committee finds Superman responsible for the incident. "He won't answer you," the woman said bitterly. "He won't answer anyone. I don't even think he'd answer God." The story exploded through major media. The government publicly called for Superman to attend the hearing. Clark was heartbroken. While he helped Gao Li with research, he watched debate after debate about his identity and intentions. Despite the controversy, Clark kept saving people, preventing disasters, and, when he could, working as an intern reporter to understand humanity's judgment of him. One day, the Daily Planet editor-in-chief called Kent, the Metropolis Library's public service event, the Lex Group Charity Gala. Someone asked that Clark Kent cover it. Clark blinked. "Why me? I'm not even a full-time reporter." "Who knows? Maybe some old lady likes nerds," the editor shrugged and left. That evening, the Metropolis Library Charity Gala was in full swing. Lights reflected off the library's modern stone walls, lending a quiet elegance. Star-like chandeliers twinkled over guests' faces, turning the hall into something like a starlit sky. Ink and paper scents drifted in the air. Portraits of illustrious figures lined the walls, reminders of the library's legacy. Antique chandeliers hung from a high ceiling, a subtle luxury offset by lively conversation. Celebrities in finery moved through the crowd, clinking champagne flutes and chatting. When a luxury car pulled up, reporters surged forward to take photos as if a star had arrived. Clark craned his neck and noticed a striking man step out, his face oddly familiar. "Who is that? Such an entrance," Clark asked a colleague. The colleague gave him a surprised look. "You're new to this high society beat. That's a big name, Bruce Wayne, of the Wayne family from Gotham City." Section 157, Wayne. Clark started at the name, then realized why it sounded so familiar. "Excuse me, have you heard of Gao Li Wayne? What's his connection to Bruce Wayne?" He had to admit he didn't know much about Gao Li. Clark had often been the junior being helped and only ever felt that Gao Li was mysteriously omnipotent. When Gao Li appeared in Metropolis or Gotham, he sometimes altered his appearance like magic. The colleague frowned, trying to remember. "I think so. Wasn't he the second son of the Wayne family who was exposed a few years back? He's extremely low-key. Hardly anyone knows him." Clark was surprised. Mr. Wayne low-key? He could only interpret it as someone who did great things without seeking credit, hiding achievements more than most. He wondered idly whether Gao Li would show up tonight. The answer seemed obvious, no. As head of the Fadian group, Gao Li was openly disliked by Rex. Even if Rex sent an invitation, Gao Li would probably ignore it. And Bruce Wayne's younger brother, Light Wayne, was considered too ordinary to merit an invite by Rex. It was enough merely to invite Bruce. As the guests arrived, the charity gala began. Soft lights bathed the ornate hall. A waltz drifted through the air. Socialites, philanthropists, and political and business figures in splendid gowns and tuxedos mingled, champagne in hand, laughter echoing beneath huge glass chandeliers. Bronze and amber decorations lined the corners of the grand room, and waiters navigated the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres and cocktails. At the center, the host, dressed in an eye-catching red, stepped forward to deliver the opening remarks. A philanthropist, a lover of books, a true friend of the Metropolis Library, please welcome Mr. Lex Luthor. "Me? All right." Rex waved and mounted the stage under the room's attention. He tested the microphone with some casual remarks, then launched into his speech. The word philanthropist comes from Greek, meaning lover of humanity. It dates back about 2,500 years. Most people focused on Rex's speech, but a few were distracted. Bruce, for one, had been tracking a mercenary leader who showed up in Nemiro village. The trail led to the Lex group, which was why he'd been invited. Bruce intended to use the gala to investigate the Lex group. While Rex spoke, Bruce quietly contacted Alfred through his earpiece. "All right, where do I go, Alfred?" he murmured. Alfred, hunched over a bank of equipment, studied the structural scan on the screen. "Past the elevator, then left. It should be right there in the service corridor under the basement. Go down now." What was originally only audible to Bruce through the earpiece could not escape Clark's super hearing. What was Mr. Wayne up to? And why so secretive? He didn't expect a major shareholder to act as a corporate spy, but Bruce's movements suggested just that. Diana Prince listened too. As the daughter of Zeus and an Amazon princess, the Wonder Woman who'd been around since World War I, her hearing picked up the same exchange. She glanced at Bruce with mild curiosity. "Between gods and men, Prometheus chose us," Rex intoned theatrically. "He thwarted Zeus's plan to destroy humanity and was struck by lightning for it." He gestured with a flourish. Diana, who disliked the sermonizing tone and the classical references being shoehorned into a corporate speech, redirected her attention to what Bruce was doing. She could hear Alfred's voice as clearly as Clark could. "Go to the stairs. You saw them when you came in. Go downstairs. Oh, Light Wayne? Are you back? I'm busy. Go play with young Master Dick for now." "What? You want a cookie?" "All right, then. Master Bruce will have to wait until I finish. I'll come back with them." "Alfred," Bruce snapped, voice low. "I'm in the middle of something important. Gowlee says you spoil Light too much." Alfred chuckled. "Only joking. Master Gowlee is amusing. Master Bruce is far more grave. Young Master Light, I'll tell the kitchen to prepare something for you." They don't make them as well as I do, but you'll manage. I think Master Bruce can be done in about 10 minutes if he hurries, right?" Clark listened, a little embarrassed at how easily the conversation strayed to Charles Wayne and Light. During the time Clark had been helping Gowlee with research, he'd become fond of Light. An innocent child, almost like a small animal in a human world. Diana, however, showed no recognition of the names. They meant nothing to her. Bruce slipped downstairs, passing the kitchen where banquet food was being prepared. The device on his briefcase blinked, a 7-minute countdown. He accessed the equipment and began a quick data transfer. After the transfer completed, he made his way back upstairs to mingle. Clark, who had witnessed the transfer from where he stood with X-ray vision and super hearing, went after him. "Mr. Wayne! Mr. Wayne!" Clark approached, extending a hand. "I'm Clark Kent with the Daily Planet." Bruce nodded, briefly polite. "My foundation has issued a statement supporting public libraries. Please note, it's unrelated to Lex Group. My brother will be displeased otherwise." After a few perfunctory words, Bruce started to leave, but Clark seized the moment. "What's your stance on the Batman vigilante in Gotham?" Clark's question was a probe. He couldn't be sure Bruce was Batman, only suspected it, and he didn't want to involve Gowlee by asking outright. Under the surface, Bruce's breathing and pulse shifted. "Daily Planet, wait, which paper is that?" he muttered. Clark was neither humble nor arrogant. "As far as I know, the Daily Planet doesn't have shares in Wayne Group." He didn't add that the Fadian Group had invested in it. He'd applied for his reporter internship, knowing Gowlee had stakes in the Planet and believing it would be more courageous under Gowlee's influence. "I've seen many reports about vigilantism," Clark pressed. "Civil liberties are being trampled in your city. Good people live in fear. Don't you have any thoughts on that?" Bruce stiffened. "Don't believe everything you hear, kid." "No, that's what I saw with my own eyes, Mr. Red Wayne." Clark didn't back down. His supervision had shown him things happening in Gotham from a distance. "He acts like he's above the law, doesn't he?" "Oh, then you certainly haven't seen the other Gotham vigilante," Bruce said, eyebrow raised. "And Daily Planet criticizing those who claim to be above the law. Don't you find that hypocritical? After all, every time your Metropolis hero saves a cat from a tree, you write glowing editorials reporting on an alien who could destroy the Earth if he wanted to." Clark began. Bruce had planned to finish with, and we can't stop him at all, but something in Clark made him hesitate. He cut off the line of thought. The other Gotham vigilante, are you talking about Fang? If I recall, Fang hasn't been active in Gotham for ages. Batman still stalks the night. As for your comments about aliens, I doubt most people agree with you, Mr. Wayne. Bruce fell silent, thinking of Gao Li's similar disagreement and feeling a little deflated. Rex, sensing tension, clapped loudly. Look at that. Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent meet. Wonderful. I love bringing people together. I don't, Bruce replied flatly. Why didn't you bring Gao Li from Fadian Group here? Sharp wit. Rex pretended to be wounded, then kept up a stream of chatter about laboratories and R&D. You should visit the harbor. I'd show you my laborate. Maybe we could collaborate. My R&D team is full of bright ideas. 7 minutes are up, Alfred's voice told Bruce. Transfer complete. I need to get back and bake cookies for young Master Light and young Master Dick. With that, Bruce brushed past Rex and left. Clark had intended to follow, but a live broadcast of a factory fire in Juarez caught his eye. He ducked into a restroom, changed, and flew away to help. Bruce, meanwhile, returned to the spot where he'd left the equipment and found it gone. Damn it! He remembered passing a striking woman when he'd gone downstairs, and he'd given her a look. It's her, he realized, and chased after her, only to see Diana's back as she drove away. Alfred, still waiting to bake cookies, was incredulous. Bruce rarely failed. I suppose this proves your skills are getting dull, Alfred teased. It's time to retire, marry a beautiful woman, and settle down. You are dreaming, Alfred, Bruce snapped. Alfred, more serious now, pointed out, should I remind you that device might reveal your identity? It's important. Bruce was confident. It has military-grade encryption. It's not easy to crack. It's sufficient to help me get it back. Alfred sighed. I suspect Lex Group's encryption is similarly confident, yet you cracked theirs in 7 minutes. Bruce was speechless. The logic was inescapable. We don't know who we're dealing with. Maybe she has the same level of tech. And for this sort of thing, Master Gao Li's magic is far more convenient than yours, you must admit. Bruce gave in. Fine, he's back in Gotham anyway. I'll trouble him one more time. Diana had driven away to her residence. She connected the device to her computer and watched a wall of garbled code stream across the screen as if daring her. She smiled. Interesting. Let's see what secrets the Wayne boy has. Though she was a daughter of Zeus, Diana wasn't unfamiliar with modern technology. She had lived among humans for many years, witnessed their progress, and had the leisure to study cryptography and computer science. Her fingers clicked across the keys as she tried decryption after decryption. Each attempt failed. This isn't simple, Diana muttered. Possible solutions flickered through her mind and were dismissed one by one. The encryption wasn't something ordinary tools could unravel. It seemed layered, designed with multiple keys hidden in different parts of the file. Diana closed her eyes to calm herself, then reopened them with a new determination. All right, she said to the silent room. Let me try something different. She began a systematic analysis, searching for patterns, probing each layer of protection. Each layer required a specific key. The keys were obscured, dispersed, hidden in other file segments. It would take ingenuity and perhaps an unconventional approach to get through, and Diana was ready to challenge it. Section 158. Diana began decrypting the keys one by one, a slow, meticulous process that demanded extreme patience and razor-sharp focus. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, each keystroke crisp in the quiet room. After a long stretch, she slumped onto the sofa, spent both mentally and emotionally. It wasn't physical exhaustion. Her constitution could withstand days without sleep, but the constant mental strain, the repeated dead ends and frustrated calculations had worn her down. This must be top tier, even for military-grade encryption, she muttered, staring at the small device in her hand. A rare, prickly frustration rose in her chest. She had tried everything and still couldn't break the thing open. Maybe she would have to call Bruce Wayne again. Hey, Miss Diana, I believe you took something from my house. Could you please return it? A young voice from across the living room made Diana's pupils narrow. Someone was here? When did they get in? How had she missed them? She rolled to her feet and peered across the room. A young man sat casually on the far sofa, idly fiddling with a golden, USB-like object. In Diana's sharp sight, she made out an S icon formed by a lightning bolt on the device and the small word speed beside it. "Who are you?" she demanded. The young man smiled. "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Gao Li Wayne, Bruce Wayne's younger brother. That rings a bell, right?" Diana narrowed her eyes. "I think I've heard the name. Did Bruce send you?" "Correct." Gao Li gave a little sigh. "That guy screwed up and still needs me to clean up his mess. I hope you'll forgive me, Miss Diana." Diana's smile was cool. "Little boys never learn about sharing, do they? I didn't steal anything from your house. I borrowed it." Gao Li's expression said, "Are you even hearing yourself?" Before he could comment, Diana slammed a cup onto the coffee table with a casual gesture. The cup skidded, struck the table, and knocked the memory stick from his hand. She wasn't interested in chatting. She'd wanted to distract him. "Interrupting you before you even transform is the polite thing to do," she said dryly. Gao Li's face stayed nearly impassive. He hadn't planned to transform into a rider for a fight today. The memory stick with the Speed Force concept had just been something to toy with, so he hadn't taken extra precautions. But he still needed to ensure Diana couldn't report what she'd seen later to Bruce. While he no longer hid his identity outright, there was no reason to broadcast it. You approach someone whose background you don't know, with no visible weapons, no hidden guns, and you do it with utter confidence, he observed. Your greatest reliance must be that device in your hand. Gao Li's whistle and clap were almost theatrical. Diana was no brute. Her years of experience had sharpened her reasoning. Although his deduction wasn't perfect, it was impressive. "Fortunately, everything I make is quite sturdy," she said. "A little fall won't hurt it. As a gentleman, I'll let you off for now, but you made one mistake." "And what's that?" he asked. "You underestimating me," she said. "I'm not unaware of who you are. That's how I found you so quickly." Gao Li chuckled. "I could tell at a glance you're not human." Diana bristled at the phrase. Accurate, but blunt. She was a demigod, after all. "Fine, little Wayne, you're disarmed. Game over." She didn't want to prolong the conversation. A faint sense of unease had been nagging at her spiritual senses. She wanted this settled and fast. With a step, she closed the distance in a blur and swept her hand to seize him. Gao Li, however, flicked his wrist and slapped her grip away with a sharp click. Diana froze. She had held back much of her strength to avoid hurting a normal person, yet she'd expected her attempt to be overwhelming. Now she noticed a belt had materialized at Gao Li's waist, flashing gold, and a black and gold bracer had formed on his right arm. "If you're so curious, I'll indulge you," Gao Li said. Striking a pose. "Transform." A crackling sound, then golden lightning wrapped his body and his appearance shifted. Kamen Rider Kuga, amazing mighty form. Diana's hand twitched. "What power is this? Are you even human?" "I'm human enough," he replied, "just with some Kamen Rider tech." He dashed at her with blurring speed. Diana didn't flinch. She met him and threw him with a grounded sweep. Her technique looked to have the upper hand. Gao Li flipped through the air, tumbled, and recovered, grinning. "Just testing my systems." He came again, faster and harder. Diana kicked the coffee table at him. He punched through the table and kept charging. She saw a pattern. The attack was designed to seize the shoulder and throw, a technique that suggested professional coaching. Still, to her, it felt amateur. She slipped back. He accelerated, each missed strike reverberating through the floor. Diana's counterattacks were consummate, agile, powerful, and gradually she gained the edge. But she couldn't end it too quickly. Gao Li wasn't weak. What he lacked in finesse, he more than made up for in explosive power. Several times she nearly immobilized him with locks, and several times he broke free with violent leg thrusts or by shattering the floor beneath them to change the terrain. Diana had to acknowledge his raw strength. "This is getting out of hand," she said, frowning as objects around the villa suffered. She readied herself to finish it. "Enough," she announced, preparing to go all out. "Oh, I have a few more gadgets to try," Gao Li replied, unfazed. He launched a flying kick. Diana flipped aside and, in that same motion, punched open a concealed compartment in the wall. She drew her divine accoutrements, lasso of truth, bracelets of submission, sword of Hephaestus, and the Aegis shield. "Now it's over," she said sharply. Gao Li's belt flashed again. Super transformation. Gold light reshaped him. Kamen Rider Kuga, amazing blue dragon. He hooked a broken table leg with his toe and it lengthened into a staff in the blink of an eye. Diana watched the change, puzzled. Is that magic? She wondered to herself. I felt no mystical disturbance. How? Blue dragon form heightened his flexibility and leaping ability. Diana felt it immediately. She lashed out with the lasso of truth, driving at him, but Gao Li moved like water, too quick, slipping through her reach. He used the staff to probe and feint, closing in while dodging her strikes. Diana slammed her shield into the staff, shattering it and knocking Gao Li back, but the form's mobility compensated. He shrugged off strength for evasiveness. It's always a trade-off, he taunted, leaping to create space. Diana pressed him, the lasso snaking through the air, eyes hard. Gao Li danced through the villa, vaulting, twisting, sweeping the staff to keep her reactive. He was slippery and unpredictable, and Diana had never fought an opponent quite like him. Their battle intensified. The lasso traced arcs as Diana parried blow after blow. She slammed a surge of energy from her bracelets at him. Gao Li used his super jump to cartwheel over the blast and land behind her with a staff swing. Diana met it with precise timing, catching his attack with her shield and redirecting his momentum into the ground. When he launched another aerial onslaught, she seized the moment. Her sword of Hephaestus shot out and slapped the staff from his hands, forcing him to fight unarmed. He caught the sword to steady himself, but was steadily shoved back. It's over. You can dodge forever, but I only need one hit, Diana declared, certain of victory. Gao Li's smile turned thin. Is that so? I don't think so. He flashed the belt once more. Super transformation. Purple gold light washed over him. Kamen Rider Kuga, amazing Titan form. Power flowed through his palms, and something in Diana's spine tightened at the shift. A new vigilance rose in her. Gao Li seemed to possess an odd ability to switch forms, each bringing distinct capabilities. So far, those changes had not been enough to overcome her superior physicality and combat experience, but she could not be complacent. What new traits would Titan form bring to the fight? Diana frowned at Gao Li's confident stance. He was proving difficult to read. She pressed the sword of Hephaestus down harder, hoping to finish the fight quickly and avoid further complications. As she grew more serious, Gao Li's resistance faltered, and the blade came to rest on his shoulder. Diana had meant only to wound him lightly, to demonstrate the difference in their strength. But the slash surprised her. So hard! The resistance she felt was immense. Before she could drive the sword further, light from Gao Li's palm spread over the blade. The sword of Hephaestus quickly began to corrode under some foreign energy and spontaneously started to transform. Diana blinked. A small section of the sword in her hand had already taken on the form of a Titan sword. If she'd been even a fraction of a second slower, the whole thing would have changed. What kind of ability is this? It's bizarre. She remembered Gao Li's earlier transformation into the blue dragon staff, but this felt even stronger. Nearly half of the sword of Hephaestus's power had been converted into another energy with terrible affinity for her. She could no longer wield the sword freely. Could his ability be to turn anything he touched into his own weapon? If so, he could not be physically touched. Diana took a breath. This was a devastating counter to close combat, but she wasn't only a close-range fighter. She created space and prepared to fight at mid to long range. Want to fight at range? Fine, Gao Li said, taking a transformation stance. Gold power shimmered around him like sunlight. Super transformation. The amazing Pegasus form of Kamen Rider Kuga, its super sensory perception, flared. Gao Li's gaze swept the battlefield and found a decorative bow and arrow amid the debris, a common ornament for someone of Diana's Amazonian background. He backflipped, creating distance, snatched the bow and arrow, and in an instant transformed them into a Pegasus bowgun. Diana's heart sank. Her suspicion had been right. Gao Li drew the Pegasus bowgun and fired. An invisible arrow sliced through the air toward her. Diana calmly swung the lasso of truth upward. It became a beam of light and shattered the arrow. She counterattacked, thrusting the lasso's energy at Gao Li. The amazing Pegasus form's enhanced senses immediately read the attack. It felt like a concealed killing move. Gao Li couldn't take it head-on. He dodged and fired a second invisible arrow. Had he detected her hidden trap? Diana felt as if he saw through her intentions. The thought made a warlike grin spread across her face. The second arrow was destroyed just a foot from her. Not so easy, she muttered. Gowli realized his shots wouldn't break through her defenses. He switched tactics, using his senses to probe for weaknesses. Diana didn't show any. She knew only continuous pressure could force an opening. She summoned other divine artifacts and flooded the field with beams of light. The duel intensified. The Pegasus bowgun spat waves of compressed air like writhing serpents toward Diana. She used the lasso of truth and the sword of Hephaestus, when she could, to pull and shatter those air arrows, moving like a dancer across the ruins. Gowli calmly aimed for the smallest lapse in her guard, launching charged shots and golden, condensed bursts of gold power. Booms echoed through the broken hall. Colliding waves of energy created a storm that devoured the surroundings. Rubble crashed, but both combatants re-emerged from beneath it. Diana let out a long sigh. I must commend you. You fought well. It's been a long time since I met an opponent like you. But this commotion will attract the police. I live among humans. I don't want to cause too much of a stir. She raised the sword of Hephaestus and pointed it at him. So next, I won't hold back. I'll unleash my full power and end this quickly. Gowli stretched his neck and smiled slightly. Coincidentally, I was only playing earlier. I haven't fought seriously, so let me get serious and take you down, Diana snorted. Big words for a boy with a weak sense of pride. To her, his talk was bravado. He had been at a disadvantage earlier. Gowli simply shook his head and didn't reply. He let facts speak. The golden ring, the endless Yinglong ring of condensed magic, appeared on his finger as he returned to human form. Come on, transform. A pillar of brilliant gold shot into the sky. Soon after, Diana lay on the ground panting, her mind reeling. What had just happened? Not long ago, she'd thought the boy's posturing was mere pride, but then he had become something like a terrifying demon king. She hadn't faced anyone this strong. Never. His power was overwhelming to the point that even her indomitable spirit had been shaken. Who are you, really? Gowli sat beside her, already reverted. Didn't I tell you? I'm Gowli Wayne, Bruce Wayne's younger brother. Diana ground her teeth. Don't joke, a human can't be this powerful. She had fought Ares of the Greek pantheon. From experience, she distrusted such a claim. If Gowli were to speculate, he might even say that not even Zeus could beat him, but Diana wouldn't consider that. Why can't humans be powerful? Gowli shrugged. That's just discrimination. Why can't humans become strong? Diana had no answer to that. She had met humans with surprising spiritual strength before. Then Gowli's gaze drifted to the ruined villa. This is pretty bad. You can bill the Wayne Group. We'll cover the damage. Diana was momentarily speechless. Was that his victory line? She forced a faint smile. No need. I'm not that poor. Besides, I lost. I'll accept that. She struggled to her feet, handed Bruce's device to Gowli. Take it back. Don't worry. The military-grade encryption inside was impenetrable to me. Gowli chuckled and took it. Of course. The Wayne Group and Fadian Group exchange patents. The encryption includes some of my tech. Not everyone can crack it. His smugness annoyed her. If you're so confident in the encryption, why rush here like that? Gowli stroked his chin. I told you before I wasn't entirely unaware of your background. I collected information about you a long time ago. I wouldn't disturb your life when nothing's happening, but today was an opportunity. Diana frowned, but accepted that explanation. Regardless, the noise from our fight was huge. Are you sure no one noticed? Don't worry. Gowli was practical. He had set a concealment spell from the start. No one outside saw anything. All right, Diana said, relieved. Gowli added, if you're interested in why I gathered your information, you can come to Gotham and we can talk. Diana sighed. By Amazon rules, the victor decides, so lead the way. They used the Bifrost Bridge to return to Gotham. At Wayne Manor, Bruce and Diana formally met in the reception room. Diana kept staring at Bruce, and he looked puzzled. Is there something wrong? He asked. Diana's voice was even. Your brother is incredibly powerful, but you don't give off the same threat. You look like an ordinary human. Why is the difference so great? Bruce had no answer for that at the moment. He simply listened as Gowli explained his broader philosophy. Extraordinary abilities are becoming inevitable. Superhumans and supernatural phenomena will rise. Heroes must communicate and cooperate. Bruce frowned. So you mean you want us to join forces, to unite? Bruce in this world had a senior hero, Fang, who predated his debut. He wasn't Gotham's first masked vigilante, so unlike Batman in other realities, he never developed the obsession that only I can protect Gotham. He'd fought alongside Fang before, and it had felt right. Defeating Bane alone would have been nearly impossible. Still, Bruce was used to working alone as Batman, and he felt a little awkward now. Gao Li nodded. That's right, get a group of powerful people together, and we can do more. When people are in trouble, we can help them win battles they couldn't win on their own. It was a line straight out of Nick Fury, and it convinced Diana and Bruce. Neither were arrogant. They understood their limits. The Kryptonian invasion had made painfully clear that enemies could be overwhelming in power and number. I don't mind, Diana said, but who are the members? Gao Li stroked his chin. For now, Flash, Barry Allen, Batman, Bruce Wayne, and you, Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. I wanted to invite Superman too, Gao Li continued. I think he'd agree, but I haven't talked to him yet because one member seems to have some prejudice against him. We should sort that among ourselves first. And there's a guy who talks to fish and a cyberpunk youngster, he added. I haven't contacted them. You two I recommend recruiting them. Bruce raised an eyebrow at Gao Li's vagueness about a certain member. Diana, puzzled, asked, What about you? You're powerful. If Bruce's joining is acceptable, why wouldn't you? Gao Li waved it off. I don't need to join. I don't like being tied down by organizations. I can be your consultant and help when needed. Consultant? Diana asked. How's that different? Gao Li spread his hands. It means I work when I want to and take a direct vacation when I don't. Diana stared. Then she pressed the point. With your strength, if you joined, our efficiency helping others would increase tenfold. Isn't that the point of forming this group? You flatter me, Gao Li said. I'm just an ordinary scientist. I don't have the conviction you all do. Diana felt mocked for some reason and suppressed the irritation. Bruce intervened, practical as ever. After all that, we still don't have a name. Gao Li thought for a beat. How about Avengers, Cough Cuff, or Justice League? In short, you can work out the specifics. That settled it for the moment. Gao Li would reach out to Superman and Flash. Bruce and Diana would contact Aquaman, Arthur Curry, and Cyborg, Victor Stone. Out in the Wayne Manor garden, Little Light was snacking when he perked up. Because Gao Li and Diana had discussed things in the reception room rather than the Batcave, the soundproofing of an ordinary house hadn't hidden their conversation from his keen ears. A superhero league? So cool. To Little Light, his cartoons were coming to life. He wanted to join, immediately. But he imagined Gao Li's reaction. What's a kid doing getting involved? Go play. Call Dick to play with you. Be good. Daddy has work to do. Gao Li rarely involved Little Light in serious matters. The reason was simple. Serious matters were already troublesome, and Gao Li was too busy to babysit a mischievous child, or a wolf cub, depending on what he was. Babies and children were wildly unpredictable and almost always made extra work, so Gao Li mostly kept Light out of it. Little Light's imagination hadn't been far off. He decided to go find Alfred. Maybe Alfred could persuade Gao Li for him. He knocked gently on Alfred's door. The golden gleam in his eyes made him look all anticipation. Alfred, are you there? The door opened, and Alfred appeared, composed as ever. Light Wayne, is there something you need? Little Light hopped onto the sofa. Alfred, I want to talk to you. His voice trembled just a little. Alfred sat beside him. All right, what is it? I want to join Daddy's superhero league, Little Light declared. Alfred blinked, startled. He'd overheard some of the visitors earlier. He'd helped serve tea, and he'd heard enough to put a few pieces together. But he hadn't expected this. Do you know why you want to join? Because it's super cool, just like in the cartoons. Little Light puffed his chest. I'm not scared. I'm super strong. I look stronger than the people in those cartoons. Alfred smiled gently, but was cautious. Children love to exaggerate their strength. Lightwayne, even if you are strong, joining a league like that is dangerous. The heroes you watch face life and death situations every day. I hope you'll wait. You can help people in smaller ways until you're older. Little Light's face fell. When will I grow up? I measured myself recently and I haven't grown since last year. Alfred didn't know what to say to that. He softened. You're still a child. There will be a time for that. For now, I want you safe. Little Light changed tactics. He walked to the window stared at the clouds for a moment, then turned back with a solemn expression. Alfred, I'm really grateful to you. You always take care of me. I know you do it because you don't want me hurt, but there are things I have to do to grow. Alfred watched the stubborn set of his jaw and tried to hide a smile. Where had Light picked up such speeches? When pleading failed, little Light dropped to the floor and rolled, full-on tantrum. Please, Alfred, help me talk to Daddy. Please. Alfred felt his resolve melting. Very well, I'll speak to your father and tell him what you want, but you must understand, Mr. Gowley is likely to refuse because he worries about your safety. Alfred stroked Little Light's hair. Little Light burst up and cheered. Thank you, Alfred. He ran off. Alfred shook his head and smiled. He meant to mention it to Gowley while delivering refreshments to the lab. But he also knew Gowley. When he was buried in work, Gowley might acknowledge it, then promptly forget. If Gowley dismissed the idea, well, that would be on Gowley. Several days passed. Little Light hadn't heard back. He trusted Alfred. Alfred never lied, so where was the holdup? Gowley had indeed almost forgotten. He'd been swamped with research, even putting off something as simple as asking Clark whether he'd join the group. Then, before Gowley could reach out, Clark contacted him in a near panic. Mr. Wayne, this is bad. Something big has happened. Clark's voice was uncommonly urgent and threaded with barely controlled anger. Gowley went flat serious. Calm down. What happened? Lex Luthor kidnapped Lois, Clark said through gritted teeth. I rescued Lois and then discovered he'd also taken my parents. He's using them to force me to go to Gotham and kill Batman. Your brother, Bruce Wayne. Do you know his identity? Gowley answered calmly. I do. What help do you need right now? Clark's anger wavered into helplessness. I don't know. I just came to you first. Luthor says if I don't kill Batman within the time he gives, he'll kill my parents. If he dies or is captured by me, they die. I don't know what to do. Clark had tried using his vision and hearing and found nothing. Lex clearly understood his powers and had prepared thoroughly. Don't panic yet. Let me handle it, Gowley said. He thought for a moment. Alfred had given him a briefing when he'd sent Gowley to retrieve a device from Diana. After decoding it, Gowley realized that much of Lex's data on metahumans had already been collected by him, which at least confirmed the existence of one person Gowley had been tracking, the mercenary leader Lex had used during the Nemiro incident. Bruce had first found that mercenary leader and traced him to the LexCorp network, which was why Bruce had gone to steal intelligence at Luthor's banquet. That Russian mercenary was strong, skilled at running dirty work for Lex, and tightly connected. If Lex was behind this, those were the people most likely to have taken Clark's family. Gowley moved to his computer and instructed Satellite Zaya to track the mercenary leader.